and to come back and perform at top level, that takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. So, I love it. And my gosh, I get goosebumps now again, those goosebump moments thinking about that. So, hey, and for him to, come back again from another injury, which is not really career threatening, it was just a torn was it torn bicep or something,
Something like
torn
that, yeah.
pectoral muscle or something.
Yeah.
He's coming back in normal time. But, it's his ambition to be champion. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm kind of excited to see, because for sure now we're going to have it in a stadium. So, he'll have his, limited fans, of course.
At the Rumble,
But
I'm not sure if they're doing any fans, are they?
No, it's normal Thunderdome pay-per-view. They're going to be doing normal pay-per-views and shows up till WrestleMania in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
So,
well,
lots to look forward to, guys. This is a very, very difficult Royal Rumble to predict.
I think that they spoiled it again because they could have had the option of Edge returning to the Rumble for a second time. That would have been something. What are you going to do?
I mean, hey, I'm like, why are you guys announcing this? Let it be spontaneous. I think what makes the Royal Rumble so great and must watch is who's going to be there.
Right.
What surprises, what returns, it's the spontaneous luck of the draw, that it's that allure. And God bless the late Pat Patterson for creating something as exciting as that.
Right.
But again, it's the toughest one to predict this year.
What are you thinking, though? What are you thinking as your predictions?
It's like I said, it's hard to say because looking at the variables, like I would go Cesaro, I would go Daniel Bryan for SmackDown, of course. Those two can hang with Roman Reigns.
Cesaro would be awesome. I'd love to see that.
It will be years in the making. Okay, on the Monday Night Raw side of things, it's kind of hard to say because there's not been that guy that seemed like that's a viable candidate for Drew McIntyre.
Rollins could come back and win it. I was always thinking that. We haven't seen
a two-time Rumble winner.
Yeah.
It's a possibility, but Rollins is on SmackDown, so
yeah.
The Rumble winner can choose whoever they want.
Who knows? I don't know. It's kind of all over the place.
It is. Like Keith Lee is a good candidate, but they're not really using him as much. Who else did I see?
Riddle
Miz,
could do
of
it.
Course, is
The Miz,
Riddle could do it.
Morrison.
Miz has the money in the bank, so it's kind of... But like I said, it's very up in the air this year. There are more viable candidates to do it, but there hasn't been that person that they've been... here it is. Like, with McIntyre, they're like, here, that's going to be our next guy for the next year. None of that happened.
Well, there's always the option that Brock Lesnar is also an entrant tomorrow, which I'm hoping is not the case. I think
that gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
I hope not that he does not make a return, man. And we'll talk about why. No. So I think we'll get started then with Brock Lesnar in our conversation. So the man hails from Michigan.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Actually. Minnesota, sorry, same place. I'm just kidding. Middle of the middle of the country. Yeah.
It's Midwest. It's Midwest, of course.
Well, so Lesnar, young guy, from South Dakota, and then he goes over there grows up on a dairy farm, nonetheless.
A dairy farmer.
Yeah. And he, at 17, decided to leave the dairy farm so that he could join the Army National Guard. However,
very respectful.
Brock Lesnar is red-green colorblind, which is a disqualification factor to work in the Army, so he was then immediately discharged after failing his first computer test. So then he worked for a construction company. So during that time, Lesnar, if you guys have never seen him before, starts to build an incredible amount of muscle. An insane. This guy started lifting like crazy. He already had looked huge before playing football, but he started competing in wrestling, and then he was just eventually when he got to state college, he was just massive. He was like a freaking gorilla. He was gigantic. He was a specimen, and he was really good at wrestling, regular, amateur style, Olympic style wrestling.
I think they call him an anomaly.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
Out of control. So, when you're that big, of course, you're gonna excel in anything that you want to do. So they always let you know in WWE that Lesnar was the NCAA Division I champion, because he was. That's a huge
Yep.
accolade.
Yep. 2000 NCAA Division I heavyweight champion. That's pretty.
In the Big Ten conference, that's a big competitive
That's
conference.
a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for sure.
That's a lot of big, corn-fed, working out on the field, middle of the country boys out there shoveling snow out, used to the cold. That's some big boys.
That's a lot of meat. It's a lot of meat in the bowl over there,
A
man.
lot of red
For
meat, working
sure.
hard till the sun go down, and then in the wintertime they're out there yelling football but out there
Yeah,
shoveling snow in negative 40-degree weather. The middle of the country is a different place. I don't know.
it is. The Midwest is a different breed of people from the Midwest. I always say it's a different breed of American, to be honest. So, and I
Well,
mean that in the best way.
well, after 4 years of college and you all you did pretty much there is you uh, just wrestle and get really good at that. Really, at that time, what other avenue are you going to do? And in 2000, we saw that was really at the boom, another boom of the wrestling, periods, because you had WCW coming to their close. WCW 2000, things changed really, for the worse back then. Is when, if you guys look at the histories, when things started really to go downhill. Um,
I would say a lot sooner than that. I think a lot. I mean, you would see the major decline. Of course, the major
yeah.
financial decline would show its face in 2000, but I think 99
Oh, 99 was
was a
definitely
year
the
where
on TV worst. Yeah.
yeah, it was tanking pretty bad. Um,
And
and you could see
unfortunately,
the
well, I guess
Titanic.
you
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
have to say unfortunately, but Vince McMahon over on the other hand on Monday Night Raw, they were killing it. They were pulling in
Oh
all the
yeah.
audience of people turning off the TV from TNT and switching over to Raw. That started to happen. You started to
Hmm.
see the pull. So Brock Lesnar, he did probably what was the smartest thing that he could do at the time. Because what are you gonna do when you're that gigantic and you look like that, and you've got this wrestling background? So Vince McMahon
Well,
essentially built him this amazing platform to succeed. If you think about it,
yeah, and thank heavens the football career didn't work because that's where he wanted to really go.
right?
Was the NFL was and a lot of guys, you know, who are athletes like that, football or whatever they're pursuing, because you can't really make money in amateur wrestling.
No,
It's always been a high school collegiate sport, or unless you're wanting to be a full time Olympian,
one of those things
or the
kind of to get you
Olympics.
there. You get a wrestling scholarship, you get a degree, you move on.
Of course, yeah, you're just there to get your education,
Some
and that's
guys,
it.
open a wrestling dojo, or maybe they might, become a coach or something, or like you said, guys go on
Sure.
to the Olympics like Kurt Angle.
Yep. Which we can do a show on him too.
I
But
think,
yeah,
yeah,
I
we
mean,
will. The
it
captain now
opens.
requested that one. I need to study for that one. That's why we didn't do it right away. But
Oh, Kurt Angle, man, that's a lot of meat and a lot of ground to cover.
especially
Like I
his
said,
executive career, nonetheless.
yeah, and now he is a podcaster now too. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of interesting
fellow.
stuff. Actually, we can share about that one. I took a listen; it's pretty good.
Well,
But
Lesnar in 2000, just like we mentioned with Orton and Cena, he goes over to OVW. That's where he debuts in their developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and
mhm,
that's also where he met Paul Heyman as well.
yep.
And they were part of Shelton Benjamin was there at the time, and Shelton Benjamin
Hmm.
was on top. He was killing it. He was white hot for OVW, and they I believe, got into a tag team together, and they called themselves like Minnesota Crew or Minnesota Wrecking Crew or something like that, and they won the
Yeah.
OVW championships.
Yep, the tag titles. Yep. Uh, two University of Minnesota boys doing the work over there. I think they were together basically at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh,
they were
yeah.
pulling the money. They were pulling the crowds. Definitely, and look at the spectacle that they could sell. You got Lesnar, who's they could sell as, like I said, looks like, I have no other explanation to what he looks like other than just a gorilla.
Oh yeah.
And you got
It's
Shelton, who's equally as big, but also incredibly agile, fast, and doing things in the ring. You know, jumping up and grabbing you by the head and pulling you straight down and doing flips and all kinds of stuff.
absolutely. I mean, Shelton Benjamin was one of the best high flyers they had
Yeah.
over there. So, I mean, he was a different type of beast, you know. And now you don't see it as much because, he's gotten much older. And you don't see him flip around too much. But you see a little glimpse here and there, and, of how he used to be. So,
Especially
yeah,
during the
pretty good stuff.
the restart of ECW, Shelton Benjamin was jumping around a lot back then.
The gold standard,
Shelton
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Love that. I love that iteration of him. They could have went many more miles with that character, but
Well, he's always been the gold standard to me.
sure, I believe so too. One of the best athletes for sure.
One of the best. Well, I mean, they see the WWF back then and all the guys. We were talking like, Jim Cornette and JR and Vince. They all realized what they had in Brock Lesnar. That they had money, they had gold, they had professional wrestling, essentially in a person. Someone that can draw a crowd, who's big, strong, can do heard of things that a normal man can't do. You can sell that instantly. He could be known as, the next big thing, both literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. Jim Ross always talks about Brock, with very, very high regard.
Yeah.
Because, when you looked at him and when they saw him perform, they're like, my God, here it is. This is our dude.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's push him. Let's get him up. Let's move him up. And that's what happened the night after WrestleMania 18. The wrestling world changed because Brock Lesnar arrived.
March 18th.
March 18th, night after WrestleMania. I think it was Montreal. Yep, it was in Montreal. And, Brock came in. I forgot who he F5'd, but he was tearing up some people. And you got this guy, and you got Paul Heyman right behind you. Oh, boy.
Yeah, Paul Heyman was with him. Yep.
Right, and you can smell it. And even in the first initial draft, which happened a week later, they were literally fighting for his services already. Guy hadn't even had one match in, but they were like, oh, nope. Brock Lesnar's, Vince was like, Brock Lesnar's coming to SmackDown. Nope. And Ric Flair was like, nope. Brock Lesnar's coming to Raw.
They already wanted him.
When you're fighting over someone's services, and they hadn't even had one match or hadn't really been on national TV all but 15 minutes.
He was already a star before he had the chance to be a star, if you think about it.
It's
before he walked in the door.
It's like you had it. I always say you had the Oscar as soon as you showed up, you had it. And I think they knew that. So, I mean, look at this statistic. I mean, in his first year, a couple months later, he wins the King of the Ring.
Yep, King of the Ring. Because he at that time he was feuding with Jeff and Matt, and
right.
Who were on top because they had just come off of their big feuds with Edge and Christian. Everyone knew who the Hardy Boys was. They were on fire, and then the only good way to put out this fire is to introduce this terrifying heel who can tear through both of them at the same time. So then people started to notice, like, oh shit. Yeah. So like you said, he goes into the King of the Ring and he's dominating in there. He's continuing to do that over the top spectacle that he was, and and he
just
defeats
by the looks.
huge
Yeah.
names: RVD, Booker T, Bubba Ray. He beat
Yep.
everybody for the King of the Ring.
And that's a very, very talented pool in itself. Very talented pool in itself. And to come out and say, "Hey, I'm the young guy. I'm about to take your food," and these aren't just, you know, these are decade long veterans.
Yeah.
Even at that time, you're looking at Booker T, who's probably had already a decade and a half in the business already at that point. Same with Bubba Ray. You know, to say that I beat them and I got that high honor to be the King of the Ring. Come on. 2002, and you're not even on TV 2 months.
As a fan,
You
you're
know.
starting to go, "Holy shit, who is this guy?"
Oh yeah.
They're starting to pay
Most
attention now,
definitely.
so the smartest thing to do now is to send them right to the championship. That's what it's all about. Wrestling's all about that. You give the hot guy the championship.
I mean, he even defeated Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. To be a King of the Ring and then beat Hulk Hogan, and at that time he didn't even have 3 or 4 months in the business as it was.
Yeah.
That's a very good resume. So you move on to the Nassau Coliseum, you go to SummerSlam 2002, and you're put against probably the hottest star in the industry, in The Rock, where the fans, at that time, Rock was going to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Rock was
Everyone knew.
phasing himself out. Everybody knew. Crowd was kind of against him, if you remember that match.
Mm-hmm.
But when Brock came out, that pop. You know what I mean? So
He was
you pit.
he was the redemption arc for that story because, like you said, the fans, both in real life and in story, were against The Rock for the first time in a while, but he's still obviously the most popular superstar on the planet.
Yeah, of course, but wrestling fans are very unique.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they don't want to see that. They know that Rock's not going to be around, and we don't. You're yesterday's news to us.
Yeah. You don't matter as
Okay.
much.
You don't exactly. You don't. So, Brock ends up defeating Rock in a pretty good match.
Brock and Rock.
And becomes Brock and Rock.
Yeah.
And 100, I think it was 123 days into being a superstar in his rookie year.
One of the
becomes
fastest
WWE
people.
champion,
One of the fastest people to do that.
Yeah, Ric Flair was actually first, but Ric Flair's different.
Yeah.
I think Ric Flair beat him by 10 days. But if you're looking at, I think if you're looking at it as far as youth goes, because he was only about 23, 24 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And to say that, okay, in the first 123 days of my career, I did this. I won the King of the Ring, I beat Hulk Hogan, and I beat The Rock. And I'm now WWE champion.
Undisputed champion, nonetheless.
Excuse me, undisputed champion. And to do that puts you in a legendary status. What Brock Lesnar did in that 123 days takes some stars at least 5 to 10 years to do.
And they were doing the Undisputed Championship was being defended back then as the one championship against
between
both
brands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Up until I think about a month or two later, where Stephanie McMahon was like, well, yeah, Brock's coming with us, because he was still exclusive to SmackDown. He was SmackDown.
Yep.
And they said, well, the WWE Championship's with us permanently. Eric Bischoff, you don't have a championship. I remember that segment, and I actually rewatched that segment. They went back in the limousine, and that was the first time Raw did not have a heavyweight championship.
Yep.
So
they took the title.
That on.
They took the title and they went with it. They got in the limousine and they went with it.
And went away. And not only that, he had a pretty good, and that was probably the best summer he's had. And then now you're stepping up against a guy like The Undertaker.
The best thing to happen out of that, though, was that Eric B reestablished the World Heavyweight Championship. Thank God. The
Yeah,
Big
Big
Gold.
Gold. I
Big
call it
Gold came
Big
back.
Goldie.
Which
Yeah.
has always been my favorite title, by the way, guys. I've always wanted a replica World Heavyweight Championship. I've loved that championship. To me, that's like the symbol of professional wrestling. I think some of the first people
Oh
I
yes.
remember holding that was like Batista, seeing early memories of those things.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you look at that title, you look at tradition. You look at Dusty Rhodes. You look at Ric Flair. You look at some of the very best who've stepped in the ring. That title has much more lineage. Going back many decades. So
And
I
Randy
really
Orton
love
being
that
the
title
last one.
myself. Eh, yeah, well, actually, John Cena was the last one. Randy Orton had the WWE. Well, no, you're right. You're
Yep.
right. Randy Orton was the last one. No. Daniel Bryan is the last one. Wait a minute. No,
It's
Brock
Orton.
Lesnar. Well, to be the official world champion
So
before the unification.
the last World Heavyweight Champion would have been Orton, I believe.
Are we talking about before they unified? Right.
Even with so I think
Because
it
before they
was
unified, because Randy Orton was WWE champion at that time, and then John Cena was the World Heavyweight champion. So John Cena was the last one to actually hold it as the titles were split.
so when the
And the
World Heavyweight,
last,
so then when they unified it with victory over Cena, Orton became the final heavyweight champion. So just like the same thing back then, the big gold belt was used this time in tandem with the WWE championship. So that was the signify that Randy is the youngest, the four-time, the final champ, the last one to officially touch Big Goldie before it was put in the vault. It was Orton.
oh, you mean,
Because at that time they
well,
absolved the championship to become the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
if you think about it technically, really, technically, to someone who physically held it, because remember, uh, they had the two belts for the longest, and then Brock, when he beat Cena in 2014, is technically the last one to actually hold it with the WWE Championship. I mean, you
Yeah.
can go back. I mean,
What they're
that's how
saying
I
is in
remember
the
it.
in the record books is that Orton is the final World Heavyweight Champion.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of going to debate you on that one.
No, he is the final World Champion. You can look it up at
How
break, and
so?
we'll come back and talk about it. Yeah, he's the final World Heavyweight Champion, the last one.
How is that though?
Officially the last World Heavyweight Champion.
But how is that?
Because when it was when he beat Cena, he held that championship, and the big gold was used in tandem with the WWE title. And then when Brock was became the champion in 2014 was when the World Heavyweight Championship was officially put into the vault, and they gave Brock a brand new WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
We'll have to talk about that. But let's keep going. We'll have to talk about that. Um, we'll have to talk about that. But anyway, we go into the fall of 2002. So Brock is still WWE champion, rampaging through everybody.
Including
I
the
believe
Undertaker.
Undertaker, which kind of was I believe, the
That was
rivalry
the
that kind of sealed the deal on Brock Lesnar.
double disqualification for the championship. You remember that? And which means Lesnar
Oh yeah,
retains. And then they had a Hell in a Cell
yeah,
match.
yeah. They did have a Hell in a Cell encounter. Probably one of the more brutal Hell in a Cell matches. Very physical. You never really seen Undertaker busted up quite like that before. And yeah, I mean that victory in itself, to be Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell, is absolutely,
And Taker was wrestling with a hurt hand too.
yeah, broken hand. Well, broken hand,
Yeah.
broken arm, whatever that was. Because I remember, because they didn't want him to use the cast,
Yep.
but inside Hell in a Cell, I remember that episode. Stephanie McMahon said, uh, "You can use that. You can use that as a weapon." But that was pretty cool. That was a good match. Thinking about it,
It
I'm gonna have to
was.
rewatch that one again.
Well, at that point, you get at Lesnar. He's on top. He's champion. He's
Yep.
already gotten it now officially the only champion of SmackDown. He's beaten Taker. He beats him in a Hell in a Cell match. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
already. They What else are you gonna do with him? He's already done everything at that point. So the next thing they do is they put him in a handicap match. So they're like, all right, so now he's gonna try. Two men are gonna try and take him down,
Mm-hmm.
and he beat Edge at Rebellion, and
Yep.
he retained the title. So now I think creative was like, all right, what the hell do we do now? We need something to match Brock. We need somebody to take down Brock. We need someone to be able to defeat Brock, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be Mr. Paul White, Big Show. They play him. They finally Big Show defeats Lesnar at Survivor Series and becomes world champion.
Well,
And
with an
that's Lesnar's
asterisk.
first pinfall
Yeah,
ever.
Lesnar's very first. Yeah, ever.
Think about
Um,
that, guys. He goes all that time without ever shoulders touching the mat for
nope.
three.
It was. Yeah. I mean, even though it was done dirty,
Yeah.
and it was a cross with Paul Heyman. I mean, it gave him a face turn because it made him the baby face. He didn't play it as a heel,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, I mean, for that kind of thing to be his, um, what am I trying to say here? For that turn, it was kind of good though for him because it made Brock more. It didn't make him much more of a threat, but it made him more of a crowd favorite. He's not really a heel because more people were cheering for him than booing for him. So, but that was kind of weak though because the Big Show rivalry didn't really go too far.
No, not
Because
really.
what it really does is it sets up Armageddon 2002, where Big Show and Kurt Angle go into one another. Um, but Brock Lesnar comes in and interferes to try to get like some sort of revenge, and then Kurt Angle wins. Um, Kurt Angle wins the title,
Yeah.
which sets us up
Well,
for
at that point,
redemption.
if you think about it, they paint Brock Lesnar now as the ultimate. That's the ultimate story right there. That's the ultimate,
Right.
big guy showcased as the most dominant force for that long, all the way until that long to lose, and then, like you said, it's the end all be all of professional wrestling at the time was Brock Lesnar. So I think at that time they're like, we just need to move on a little bit, but also still keep Lesnar in the background as still potential as to go, big again.
I can see that. I can, from that perspective, I can see that. But really, Brock never lost his place in line.
No.
You know, um, they could have. I believe Vince could have kept it on him for a long time. But I think the crowning achievement was getting to WrestleMania.
With the Royal
I think
Rumble.
that's what right, with the Royal Rumble victory. I think that's where they wanted. They wanted, for some reason, you're not really a big star until you're coordinated at WrestleMania.
And that's kind of the
So
icing on the cake right there to go all the way, because then, like we said earlier, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to give him? You're going to make him a tag champion? You're going to give him one of the lower belts? No, you're not going to do any of that stuff. You
no,
got to do something else.
Brock was never mid card.
No, never mid card. You
Brock,
can't even. So at that point, you can't send him down because then you ruin Brock Lesnar.
yeah, Brock would never be a United States champion. Brock would
No.
never be an Intercontinental champion. He'll never be a tag champion. Let's be real here. Brock has always been main event material, no matter how you looked at him. No matter how you look at him today, now thinking about it and doing this research, Brock was always main event level
Yeah,
to anybody.
shot right to the
He would
sky
never
from
stoop.
rocketed right there.
Exactly. He didn't have to do what guys like Bret Hart had to do,
No,
or Shawn Michaels, and become
or most of the
Intercontinental
current
champion
talent right now
first.
is having to do.
Right, you have to. Well, it's a time honored tradition, right? You win for some. you win the mid card title,
Yeah.
and you're the champion. The only person that didn't do that, thinking of it now, is Jinder Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
Jinder Mahal is actually one up with Lesnar because he didn't win he didn't have any title really. I think he was a tag champ at one point, but never went to a mid card title. He went right to the WWE Championship
Yeah.
after he came back. So I mean,
I
Jinder
always enjoyed
Mahal.
Jinder as the champion. I thought that was a good time.
You know what? And I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to make that an episode. Uh, Jinder's WWE Championship reign is just a masterful piece in heel work. But anyway,
But there's also
um,
there's so much, backstage and behind the
yeah,
scenes stuff of why Jinder
yeah,
was champion. It's crazy. And to why he
yeah.
retained his championship at so many times.
A lot of people don't understand, but we'll
I
have
want
to
to see
get into
Jinder
that one.
again.
He was on that Superstar Spectacle thing.
Was he? I didn't get a chance to see that.
Yeah, he looks good, man. He
What was
is
the Superstar Spectacle thing, anyways?
it was to promote their relationship with India. It was like Indian
Um,
Republic Day.
mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty solid show. You see all the top stars from India. I don't know if you remember IndoShare.
Mm-hmm.
Their NXT. You're at NXT a lot. IndoShare. Malcolm Bivens used to manage them,
Yep.
but they were there. And but Jinder tagged again with the Singh brothers, are now called the Bollywood Boys again. So I mean, listen. He looks good, and you know what? To be honest, if they put him in the Royal Rumble, I would pick Jinder because Drew and Jinder have a lot of history,
I think
and I
Ginger
think
could
he'll
do
do
it
great.
tomorrow. If he's there, I have a feeling he'll do it.
Hey, that's a
Yeah,
great thing. I
that's
love
a good.
Jinder, but a
I
lot
love
of
him
people
too.
wouldn't do that. But anyway, we're on Brock Lesnar, not Jinder
Yeah,
Mahal. But
so he
sorry.
Lesnar wins the Royal Rumble, which is now the one of the bigger crowning achievements because you think there's nothing else for him to do besides win the Royal Rumble. So that gives him WrestleMania. What is that? 12, 11, 12,
No, WrestleMania 19 actually
19. Sorry, I'm
was
looking at the
yeah.
Greek letters wrong. My fault. Um,
But yeah,
he that's who was that was who set I forgot who set up that WrestleMania match. What was it between for Brock Lesnar? What was the crowning match?
it was Kurt versus Brock Lesnar.
Is this the one where
And
Kurt Brock where he won with a broken freaking neck?
yeah,
Is this where
yeah, he
yes.
went into the main event. Yeah, he went into the main event with a broken neck. That was you didn't really see Kurt much. Interesting. Yeah, uh,
Well,
Kurt's neck was
so
broken.
it's so interesting about that's right, WrestleMania 19 because Um, if both of these guys, Kurt Angle and Lesnar, were wrestling with hurt necks at the same time, how dangerous is that? But that's in my opinion, that's the ultimate. The show must go on. Can you imagine what was going through the backstage minds of everybody at your biggest
Uh,
show with your biggest two guys, and you got them both hurt at the same time?
oh, it's a clutching my pearls type moment.
I would have shit my bricks all day. I would
Oh,
have been like,
I
what? That's like having Muhammad Ali versus Sugar Ray, and Sugar
right,
Ray's got a broken ankle, and Muhammad's got fucked up teeth and can't take a punch.
right, or messed up wrists or
God,
something like that. To that effect.
that's
But
what the
yeah, they both
caliber
were
was,
very hurt.
because at the end of the day, yes, it is sports entertainment, and yeah, of course they could have done something else for safety or whatever else that night, but these guys are professional athletes and they went out there and they still did it. The show still went on, and that's like Kurt Angle. That's
Well,
where that stemmed from with the broken freaking neck because he had a broken motherfucking neck. If you think
oh man,
about it,
it was very bad. One bad move could have paralyzed him.
yeah.
Let's just say that.
Ultimate
One bad
respect for
move.
these guys that night to go out there and
Oh,
do that
absolutely.
because
And being injured, and these are not just normal injuries. These are like career-ending injuries that, if
well, Brock
anything were to go astray,
he got hurt by
well, not
doing some.
Brock.
Well, Brock did
Yeah.
he got hurt that night because of the freaking moon or not the was it the moonsault he messed up or something, the shooting
So
star press or something, he
Yeah,
messed that up. And
that was kind of interesting.
why do that? Lesnar hadn't done that in years. Why do that night of all time? You know?
Well, it's WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's WrestleMania.
It's your first WrestleMania. And not only is it your first WrestleMania, it's your first WrestleMania main event.
Yeah.
And not only is it your first WrestleMania main event, it is your first WrestleMania main event for a championship. So
that you
they
undisputedly earned. So yes, you are right. You do have to go out there and give your A game.
You know, something very interesting out of the Kurt Angle podcast, now that we're talking about WrestleMania 19, Kurt was going to sit that WrestleMania out to kind of mend his injuries.
Yeah, because he had a broken fucking neck.
In there? You know who would have been in there?
Who?
Chris Benoit.
Wow.
So we could have, if Kurt Angle were to sit out of WrestleMania 19, we would have had Chris Benoit versus Brock Lesnar for the title.
And it wasn't until shortly after Benoit did what Benoit did.
Benoit did what Benoit.
Which, by the way, now that we said his name, to get the elephant out of the room, I will not do a podcast on Chris Benoit. I am not opening that door.
Oh, come on.
I do not. Well, I don't. Think about the door that we open when we talk about what happened.
Think about. I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable because you're opening a really forbidden door.
Yeah.
This guy, you can't, and I can understand where you're coming from. You can't glorify someone who did what he did.
I don't even want to say honestly what he did. You know.
No. You don't have
you know,
to.
It's and if you guys don't know what happened, if you were not even some of you guys that listened to this weren't even of age or not even thought of being born at the time when this happened.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, so if you guys go back and look at the history of what happened, but I mean, we can talk about Chris Benoit and talk about how it does because it did affect a lot of things, but I just don't particularly think that we should do a Chris Benoit episode, is what I'm saying.
We don't have to. We don't have to. You guys can easily look it up. There's episodes of Dark Side of the Ring on
Definitely,
YouTube.
Yeah, the Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring. Chris Benoit. You'll get all the information you need about what happened and why his name is kind of a no-no in the wrestling world. And I don't know why they're trying to bring it. They're trying to make it. I don't know. But anyway, you get to WrestleMania 19, huh?
We can mention it and we'll talk Chris Benoit, and I'm not saying that he's a forbidden topic or what happened, but I just do not want to do that as one singular thing. So just because we always have that thing for sake, because even just putting Chris Benoit as a podcast, I don't, unfortunately that would be the main subject of the whole thing.
Yeah, it was very bad what he did.
So that one is the I know our robot on Twitch always asks you guys who or what would you guys like to talk about. So we'll talk about that, but we're not going to do a feature.
No. We'll talk briefly, but we'll never open that door because there's a certain section of his life that will just dominate. It eclipses his career. Let's just say that it really does. But eventually Lesnar wins the championship in probably a great match.
Well, and also, Angle and Lesnar were working so well together at the time. They were like essentially.
They had chemistry.
Yeah, they had chemistry. It was hard not to see that on TV either. It was hard to believe that these guys were enemies. And then they were such good friends, backstage. And I think that both of them had the utmost respect for each other after they walked out of WrestleMania together. Like, hey man, you broke my neck? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I got a broken neck, do you?
Yeah. Well, they get to go to it was in the British Columbia, and they had a steel cage match, him and Angle, and Vince McMahon was the referee.
Yeah.
And I think something happened in that Lesnar also got hurt during this, right? Like not necessarily hurt, but he like had a faint. He like blacked out. during.
I believe I can't really remember what happened fully. And I remember that cage match, but I
Yeah,
just can't remember what happened fully
he like
in there. It's been
something
so many
happened. I know he
years.
didn't hit. He didn't hit him his head or not, because I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, did he hit his head again? Is it something?"
I
I
feel like he's
think he
concussed.
was, I think, still concussed from then, and I think it was just residual
Mm,
effects. But if you noticeably noticed that Lesnar was not 100% Lesnar. He's
yeah.
not the Lesnar that we knew, but he like had some kind of fainting spell in the match. So he's still, once again, the show must go on again. This time inside a motherfucking steel cage.
And you're bringing when you are in a cage or you're in those kind of specialty matches, the danger level is just
Hmm.
a lot more higher, and it's a lot more. You're more of a liability. But remember, in those days, even in the early days of the ruthless aggression era, you still had to go out there and wrestle your matches,
Yeah.
no matter what. It's not like now where you can actually sit out and
Oh,
you
hold
know.
on one second. Some some background noise. One second there, guys.
Oops,
Jeremy.
sorry.
1 second.
What is going on? Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that, guys. My dog rolled over on the remote and turned on a trailer for the Karate Kid.
Wax on, wax off, Miyagi-san.
That's exactly
Oh,
what was playing. That part of the trailer was playing when he rolled over onto the remote at Amazon. So yeah, we record these things live, guys. This is all, you can't make that stuff up. So yeah,
no.
we get back to it. Inside the steel cage, Lesnar. Thank God these guys, they both make it out okay. Um,
Mhm.
and you just see the utmost respect of sportsmanship between these two. Still,
Of course.
still. And it all comes down to the Iron Man match. And god damn it, was this probably, in my opinion, one of the best Iron Man matches we have ever seen in the history
Very,
of wrestling. I still think
very,
from that
yeah.
time and any time afterwards, for me, I've never seen a better Iron Man match than at that time. No one's
Especially
done
with
it
it
better.
being, oh yeah. I mean, especially with it being 60 minutes and on national TV, it gets kind of hard to watch Iron Man matches because they run so long.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't really do 60 minutes anymore. But that one had you on the edge of your seat. Each pinfall was a story,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see within each pinfall there was a level of desperation
People were
at
leaning
each
forward in their
point,
seats. They were notating how what the score was. They were looking at it like it was like the NBA finals.
or the World
Right.
Series, and you're at the bottom of the ninth, and anything can happen at this point. But you're right, one of the best Iron Man matches, and you can
Just
watch it
back
on the
and
network
forth,
commercial free.
physical and
And
back and forth. And like we said, these guys had worked with each other for so long now. They had great respect, good sportsmanship, good chemistry, and they went out there and just tore the house down. And for a whole hour, they wrestled for an hour.
one whole there was no break. That's 1 hour Iron Man match. I forgot what the final score was. I think it was like 5-4 or something like that,
Yeah,
or
I think you're right. 5-4 was it? Yep.
but
Four to.
it was in the last minute that I think Brock got the victory. I think it was in that last
Yeah.
minute. But that's what makes Iron Man matches so special. If you can utilize the point system and the desperation to get those extra points and the time, man, you got yourself a classic. And that was a classic. I remember watching it on TV as a kid.
And that's the biggest
And
thing these guys have to remember is time, because you gotta, if you mess up any of that choreograph, you're really messing with time. You're messing with
right.
the potential of the story ending, because what do? If you accidentally mess it up and then the time goes out, you gotta, see, they had to
I
stick
just
to the
love it.
very best.
Oh yeah, and I just love it. Personally for me, for Iron Man matches, when they're in like the last like 5 minutes, or even the last 3 minutes and the score
Mm-hmm.
is tied, and it's like, oh, it can go ever which way.
Yeah.
That's what gets me, and that is what Sasha. I think that's what Sasha and Bailey did when they had their 30 minutes.
Yeah.
In at NXT Takeover Respect, I know for sure they took that little page out of the Angle Lesnar Iron Man match to kind of keep it, on its toes. So I liked
Yeah.
it. You don't
Well,
really see that much anymore.
now Lesnar is 3-time champion. That's a crazy accomplishment in his short amount of time. He has the championship 3 times,
Hello.
and
and
then
three
he
times in 1 year.
yeah. At this point, he is gold. He is money. He is professional wrestling gold.
Oh, at that time, yeah. I mean, he is their star. He was the star of SmackDown.
Yeah,
The
he
leader.
was SmackDown.
Yeah, he was. For that time period, you bet your butt he was. He was on every week.
And he
But then now you're getting.
yeah,
Then you
every week
go.
he was workhorsing it back then.
Sure. But now, after that moment, you're kind of seeing the career of Brock Lesnar kind of dwindling
Start to unfold a
little by
little bit.
little.
They paired him with some weird stuff between there, and yeah, he did see Benoit one more time. Him and Taker
Yeah.
had the biker chain match.
Not as good as the Hell in a Cell.
No,
but,
that was yeah.
It ignited the rivalry again. But again, Taker did not win. Still,
People weren't really into what was going on again. It wasn't. They weren't biting
No.
it. They weren't biting at the bait that they were doing. But what they did was to fix that was they insert Lesnar into the Survivor Series match, and you've got Lesnar's team versus Angle's team. People are finally back into this again. Lesnar, Lesnar and Angle going back and forth now again, and they for at the November 16th Survivor Series, and Lesnar eliminated after it was, of all people, Benoit forced him to tap out, and Lesnar would go on to lose the match. But they set up during the Survivor Series match. Now they set up Lesnar versus Benoit later, and if you guys remember, Benoit passed out during the championship, which they called. This is where Lesnar debuted the Brock Lock.
I remember.
He passed out to the Brock Lock.
I cannot believe I did not include that in my notes because I remember watching that match as well as a kid, the Brock Lock. How can you forget? But it was so short, folks.
Yeah, it didn't last very long. No.
It was no more than like a 2-day thing. But you're right.
The Brock Lock.
But then you still see the decline of Brock Lesnar. You know.
We can then talk about. We're probably going to take a break now, and then we can come back to his little feud the first time that he met Goldberg, and then we can talk about Hardcore Holly. I mean, if you want to point out Hardcore Holly, this is also something that happened with Holly. They also said that there was a match between Holly. This is kind of in the rumor sphere. There was a match that happened between Holly and Lesnar where Lesnar, it was said to have legitimately hurt Hardcore Holly, that he didn't break the hold on purpose, and that Holly had actually legitimately received an injury because they had some beef. Now, like you said, you have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, but back then, beef was sometimes serious, so it's not hard to imagine, Lesnar's temper. Lesnar is a real life fighter as well, and it is potential that he might have hurt that boy. He might have hurt Hardcore Holly.
Probably. You don't know the secrets of pro wrestling.
No.
You talk about one thing and you screw with them, they could totally change the trajectory of the match. And
all it takes is backstage, and 5 minutes before the match, you have that power to kind of just change things. And so if Lesnar was really that malicious and did that, that's really fucked up. But at the same time, it's a sport that you're in,
whose word is Vince McMahon going to take?
Right.
Bob Holly's or Brock
Or
Lesnar's?
Lesnar, who is,
He's going to
yeah,
take he's going to take Lesnar's.
every time. Every time. Every
The
time.
sky is the sky is purple, Vince. Okay, I believe Lesnar over the scientists. They say the sky is blue. Lesnar says the sky is purple. I believe Lesnar. Whose word are you
Well,
going to take? Your
so,
biggest draw or just some guy?
or some guy, right. So, eventually what I'm getting at with this is that he interrupts on Raw and he met Goldberg for the first time, and Lesnar gave that interview that he said, I could beat anybody in the whole world. I'm Lesnar. I could beat anybody in the whole world. And Goldberg
Yeah.
interrupts the interview, and they do an iconic stare down. Um, but then when Vince finds out about what happened between him and Holly, they Vince, he loves to take that backstage heat and try to put it into creative as best as he can. And he inserted Hardcore Holly into this, and he wrote the storyline, and then told everyone that Lesnar had legitimate beef with Hardcore Holly, and that Bob Holly hated Lesnar, and so now you bring the backstage shit onto TV. And it's interesting
Mm-hmm.
because that, I think it was almost a year long that had settled between Lesnar and Holly, and then Vince was like, "Yep, let's bring it onto TV." All the way for a whole
He
year to 2004, where they had a championship match. So that was cool for Holly to go against for the WWE title, but Lesnar defeated him and all that stuff.
yeah, Bob Holly was never a guy to be the WWE champion
No,
anyway.
unfortunately
So
not. No.
you and like you said, you got to take it with a grain of salt. That rivalry was just a filler.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're getting to the more meat and potatoes. Now you're seeing the Goldberg. Uh, you're hearing rumors and rumblings that Goldberg is not extending his contract. He's
Mm-hmm.
leaving the WWE. Now you're hearing rumblings that Brock Lesnar is trying to pursue other things. Brock Lesnar is being burnt out. And you're hearing that throughout the first quarter of 2004. But, Eddie Guerrero now is stepping up,
Yeah.
and Eddie in San Francisco wins the WWE Championship.
I loved
Remember
everything
No Way
between
Out.
Eddie and Brock. That was
Oh, I
so
love,
good. Some of
and
the
that
best of
story
Eddie.
again.
Some of the best of
I
Eddie. Well, that if you think about it, that was really the last
Yeah,
time that you see Eddie in that light before Eddie passed. And now we bring up Eddie. I will always do a thing on Eddie. Yes, his death was
oh
untimely
God,
because it had to do with drugs and everything, but that wasn't essentially what caused. He didn't die of an overdose. Yes, he didn't die of a heart issues related to problem, but you know who are we to judge someone for that?
well, Eddie's story is a redemptive story.
Right.
It's someone who hit rock bottom but came back.
Multiple times up
One of
and
the
down the
Oh
ladder.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to see him at that pinnacle, hugging his mom, going into the crowd, holding up the Mexican flag, as well as the WWE Championship. It's one of those moments, man, that you just never forget. You never
He
forget
was
where you
very
were.
infectious. His smiles were very infectious during that time because
I loved me some Eddie.
he was
Uh, you
legitimately happy.
know,
You could see he was having a good time out there. He was finally Eddie Guerrero that you wanted him to be.
exactly. And
And who else but
you
to
know,
put him up against with than Brock Lesnar? You know.
and the guy who who carried the WWE, who carried um SmackDown, you know, passes the torch on
Mm-hmm.
because he knows he's going. But then you build up and you get to that point. You get to Madison Square Garden. You get to WrestleMania 20. The crowd's not into it because they know what's going on. You have two guys who are leaving, so why the crap do they give a crap about
Yeah.
the match in the first place?
That's
It
what
was
they say.
very
The WrestleMania XX, the lackluster XX. It was just not. Was not like you said. The people were just not into it.
nope, and it was it's kind of a dilemma though when you have two people who are exiting the company. And it's like, why should we care? You guys aren't going to be here tomorrow.
The only
You
good
know,
thing
you
that
guys are out the door.
the only thing they could do was insert Stone Cold to try and help this out a little bit. And I remember that's
To kind of ease
yeah,
it.
to try to ease
Yeah.
the pain a little bit. Stone Cold with the what do you call it, the four wheeler, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
What do they call those again?
ATVs.
Quads,
Yeah,
ATV quads. Yeah. Uh, but I mean, even inserting Stone Cold doesn't really help.
no,
You
it
know, on
was it
paper
was
it
kind of
looks
just too late
great.
at that point. On paper, yeah, it sounds
Right.
great. Lesnar Goldberg, right? Who wouldn't want to see
Yeah.
that back then?
Right. But you know, hey, like,
What are you gonna
it
do?
is what it is. But I think we can stop there for our break because that's the first half of Brock Lesnar's career
Yeah, because like I
to
was
be
just
in.
about to say, that was the departure sequentially the departure. Um, I remember Austin Stone Cold Stunner both of them, but yeah, Lesnar was headed to all of places to do, I guess, what he always wanted to do, NFL. He wanted to become a football player.
Football,
He
Minnesota Vikings.
minus Minnesota Vikings. Who else but his home Minnesota? Who
Yeah, of course.
wanted to become NFL. So that's he leaves in 2004 to become a football player for the NFL. So yeah, we'll take a break there, guys, and then we'll talk about Lesnar going into Japan for a little bit. You got a lot of people forget
Yep.
that he did go to Japan, one of the few people to be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion and WWE Champion still to this day.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about him coming back the second time, and then
Yeah.
if you say the third time, essentially the comeback again, and well, I wouldn't say that the mini comeback in 2015. We'll finish it out, and then we'll talk what I like to call the dark days under the reign of the Mad King Lesnar. From then on,
Yeah.
Lesnar's
Yeah.
reign.
We can definitely. It's a lot of ground to cover even in that, guys, and
The
it's a lot of
2018 the
lands.
reign, yes, the Mad King. So we'll, yeah, it's 112 now, or sorry, we it's midnight 3 now. So we'll see you guys in 10 minutes, and we'll be right back to finish out Lesnar.
All right.
Alrighty, guys, we are all set up and ready to go back from break. Part 2 of the Tagout podcast, where we're talking about Brock Lesnar. Before we get back into it, Jeremy, we can talk a little bit more of the recap of this week. Another lackluster Monday Night Raw, man.
There you go. That's it. Moving on.
Another lackluster Monday Night Raw. Awful.
Not good. Not a good go-home show. It still doesn't convince me that Goldberg and Drew McIntyre is a rivalry. It's a very snoozer match. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't like Bill Goldberg. So Nia Jax is up to her same old BS again, concussing poor ladies again.
Yeah, just like I said during the women's division podcast we did, Nia Jax is dangerous. If you don't fucking if you don't stop, she's not gonna stop. Just like I said, I literally was quoted saying that she's never gonna stop hurting people, and she's doing it again.
It's a very lackluster show. It's nothing to really move things along. Do
you know who I was also thinking for the Royal Rumble? Baron Corbin, maybe.
Yeah, but that's a very long shot.
A long shot. Well, some unfortunate actual real life news. Mia Yim does have the virus. She does have corona.
Yes,
which means she won't be there, and that also affects something else because she is I don't know, are they married or they just live together? I don't know. Either way,
I think they're just a very serious relationship, but I think Keith Lee, you can factor him out of that.
Keith Lee is what I'm getting to. Her and Keith Lee live together, and that would also mean that if he does not have it, then he's in being exposed to it. So that means that he might as well have it because he can't be there as well.
Well, you still got to quarantine per the CDC, but I don't know if they were there together. We just don't know. My hope is that Keith is in the Royal Rumble, but if not, that's so sad because that's kind of unfortunate, to be honest.
It's really Strowman did return too this week.
Yeah, on SmackDown I saw that. Yeah.
It's interesting that we're talking Lesnar and Kurt Angle because Kurt Angle talked to Lesnar this week on his podcast and was saying that he thought that Brock was dead after that botched shooting star at WrestleMania.
I mean,
we all did.
Have thought he was paralyzed.
Yeah.
At the very least. You can't do moves like that unless you practice. I don't think he practiced. I think adrenaline I'm not sure how that match went, or how they planned it, but good God, don't do that if you're hurt. You got to make sure you're 100% for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I watched something that I want to point out before, we move along, is Shinsuke Nakamura. His promo, I saw on Twitter, he had like a bit of a promo about how he lost himself since 2018, and after he won the Royal Rumble in 2018. His English is wonderful.
Yes.
He is saying sentences. I mean, he's almost fluent in English, so he's taken that time. Like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing a WWE title run, and I think
it needs to happen.
Yeah, or I think you're going to see him back in the driver's seat again, as far as getting back.
Well, if he does go for another run, you can imagine he's probably going to get it, because the last time when he feuded with AJ, he didn't get the belt. So now you can imagine he probably will get it this time, and that would just be the ultimate on the cake. And that could help us. We'll talk about Shinsuke and what he matters to this story with Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
But Shinsuke, guys, he's not anything new. He's just new to us. Shinsuke is been around for a long time, so that would be the crowning achievement for him to be WWE champion or Universal champion. That would be incredible. But also, Jeremy, we found out that the WWE Network is shutting down.
Yep, going to Peacock.
Going to Peacock, which is interesting now, guys, because now we're gonna pay $4 a month or $5 a month for more content. If you think about it, because now you're gonna have access to Peacock stuff. I'm not really know what's on there, but there's gonna be stuff on there. It's probably similar to HBO Now stuff,
It is. It's NBC's platform because, as you know, NBC Sports is phasing out.
Also phasing out.
I
Yep.
think I think they're phasing out by the end of the year, which kind of puts the Olympics in a bit of
And hockey too.
future Olympic, yeah, in hockey, in a bit of a dilemma because they rely on that. But for wrestling fans, I think that's incredible. And you're like us, like AJ said, guys, you're getting more content for half the price. Like you're getting more documentaries,
Yeah.
you're getting more network specials. So I think it's a great move.
Excuse me.
NBC Universal paid another $1 billion to Vince McMahon. So
WWE, the
to
one
do
company during this to somehow make crazier money than they ever have before.
During a pandemic
During the
year.
pandemic, with a sports company that's majority of its stuff comes from fans. Apparently, it's proven that it's not necessary.
I think that's set to launch on March 18th.
Yep.
So your WWE Network accounts may not be there anymore. Just go ahead and get into Peacock. I'm not sure how that transition's going to go. I don't think they're.
Well, I
gonna
think we're going to be
WWE
watching WrestleMania
logins.
from Peacock, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. Chances are, guys, Agent will be live for that one. So let's just hope for WrestleMania.
Do you think you'll be making it out there for that one?
To Tampa?
Yeah.
Travel across the country during the pandemic? We'll see.
Yeah.
If you're going, we'll see.
I'm definitely gonna try
say
to be
never.
going. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go if I can get the tickets, just because they are doing that limited thing. So, if the tickets are available, I'm gonna get them.
Yeah, and you already live down there. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with traveling across country during a pandemic. Well, at least probably not right now.
Yeah.
Who knows? If I can get more time off to at least quarantine for a few days and,
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, lots of great stuff. I mean, I like what they're doing with the Peacock thing.
I think it's a good idea,
like,
yeah.
Some people are like, it's a demotion. It's like, I think it's great. I think you're adding more content, and you're getting it you're saving $5 a month. Why not? You can upgrade to unlimited, but WWE Network doesn't really have commercials.
Mm-hmm.
But I think WrestleMania will be the first. No, Fastlane is actually going to be the first pay-per-view on the Peacock.
Okay, Fastlane, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to figure out how we're going to get that. I'm going to get that taken care of. Maybe
Well, back to the Lesnar story. So we left off. Lesnar chases his childhood dream of becoming a football player, and it's short-lived. But he did become a Viking, though. He was a Viking.
Yep.
And he did what some of the guys did, and he went and became a star overseas in New Japan Pro Wrestling. From 2005 to 2007, he worked for Japan, and he won. They gave him the IWGP Heavyweight Championship on his debut match in the Tokyo Dome. He's one of the few people to have been, WWE champion and IWGP champion, but he's also one of the few, Americans and nonetheless a Caucasian American to have won the championship over there. And the IWGP championship to the Japanese promotions is coveted. So to give someone, who's not of Japanese descent that championship, you have to realize that it means a lot. That meant a lot to them and to Brock, I'm sure.
It's a very rare find in Japanese pro wrestling, especially in a company like New Japan, that you would find an outsider as the world champion, especially during those times in like early 2005. I mean, I think at that time, like Hulk Hogan was at one point the IWGP champion. I think a couple of other people were as well too, but it wasn't until Brock, but you'd never really seen in New Japan a outsider be their champion. Now nowadays it's kind of common, at least the current.
AJ
You
Styles,
saw AJ Styles kind of brought that back. Kenny Omega,
Omega
you
for sure,
know,
yeah.
you know, and now you're seeing guys like Moxley in those pictures, Chris Jericho in those pictures again. So, but before you really never,
No.
you never saw Americans or anybody outside of the Japanese professional wrestling realm win the IWGP Championship. So that's kind of, but his name alone would have brought them would have brought them
the necessary attention, yeah. The attention that's
exactly.
needed.
And this is way before uh, New Japan NJPW World. This is when you could never really catch New Japan Pro Wrestling. As a matter of fact, you needed to buy tapes from somebody or DVDs from Japan just to watch it. So
right.
for Brock Lesnar to go across the world and compete and get it, that's huge.
Well, and it is huge, and they put him up against, in 2006 in Japan, he met Shinsuke Nakamura. And then for you guys, what I was saying earlier when we talked about Shinsuke, that he's not a newbie, Shinsuke is essentially the Cena, if you will, of NJPW. He is the guy. He was the guy. Nakamura, he strong style, the prince of pro wrestling, really. Of Japanese pro wrestling. He was one of the best and one of the best Japanese wrestlers of all time.
Yep, he was in the league with Hiroshi Tanahashi, Katsuyori Shibata, just to name a few. Those are pretty much legends in Japanese pro wrestling now. Tanahashi still wrestling to this day. Kind of an influence to Kota Ibushi early in his career too. So Shinsuke is like the John Cena, the Rock,
the Stone Cold, if you
Japanese.
will.
Yeah. Well, I always said Naito was more of a Stone Cold Steve
Austin. Naito. Yeah.
But he is up there with Cena, so he's the top guy. So like when we said, Shinsuke's not new to this game, he really isn't.
No.
He's a 20-year vet.
And also most notably during this time, Lesnar wrestled at Sumo Hall, and that's a huge honor because that's one of the most timely Japanese arena that we have, that Tokyo has.
The Madison Square. It's like the Madison Square Garden of the East. Yep.
So he also he wrestled. Unfortunately, during this time though, something happened with the Japanese government and the issue with his passport, and Lesnar was asked to return that back to the States. And Lesnar was stripped of the title, but it's interesting, Lesnar actually physically still held on to the championship. He physically possessed it. But for NJPW, he was no longer the IWGP heavyweight champion anymore because he could not return back to Japan to defend his championship. But he still had it. He still held on to the physical belt. So after that, of all people, Kurt Angle was the TNA champion. And they did when the Japanese, they realized that Lesnar still has the belt, they can do something about this, he physically still holds it, and was never not uncrowned the champion, they put Kurt Angle versus Lesnar together for the IWGP championship. I thought that was awesome.
I think it's a great match, and as a matter of fact, I hate to say it, it's a match I have not seen, but now that you say that, to renew their rivalry on a different professional level, outside of the WWE,
it's amazing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a testament to how these guys are, and how much respect they have for one another to still do that. Hey, let's still work together, even though we don't, we're not where we were, and we're in two different boats now. Kurt
very different boats.
Right. And Kurt had just left the WWE to go to TNA for a lighter work schedule and things of that nature, and that's something we can cover some other time. But Yeah, I mean that's great, and it came back to the states. I know because he defended it on TNA television
Yeah, he did
quite a
defend it
few
on
times.
TNA television a couple times, and then he finally lost
Yeah.
it to Angle.
Yep.
And that was Lesnar's final match. Was when he lost. Final, I should say, final wrestling match for quite some time, for 5-6 years. Brock Lesnar left the wrestling world.
Yep, and had a pretty good run in the UFC.
Yep, the UFC. He
So,
goes over to the UFC, and they kind of do similar what they do with him in wrestling. They push him to the top. He gets title shots. Immediately fights Randy Couture. He fights him in the match. Now here's the thing: Brock Lesnar is not a very technically sound fighter, but when you're that big and you're that
no.
strong, you're able to hold guys down on the mat and just pound them with your fist. You're gonna become a champion. He literally was bouncing Randy Couture's head off the fucking mat like a basketball.
Well, I mean, it helps to have amateur wrestling as a
Yeah,
background.
because he could just start the match, and if Lesnar took your if you fell to Lesnar, if you were on the ground, that was it. You couldn't get back up. Get back up.
Yeah, you couldn't. Brock is very smart when it comes down to that. You're right. He's not technically sound. He's not the he's not the greatest MMA fighter, but because he is so acute at at amateur wrestling and even with professional wrestling, because you have to be coordinated,
Very coordinated. Yeah.
it helps, and it zones him in on his competitors. So it was no mystery that Brock was going to be a success
Right.
in the
And Dana
UFC.
knew that. Mr. White knew that. He knew what he had with Lesnar,
Yep.
and he knew that if he knew that if he put him in a championship match, it was more than likely that Lesnar was going to walk out a champion.
Because you're bringing WWE fans along.
Yeah,
too,
you
and
are.
saw the money in that. So you're bringing 1 million more audience members to your
Well,
pay-per-view.
like for me,
Yeah.
personally, we also find out that Lesnar he is his Achilles heel in UFC was a submission. He never knew how to really defend himself at a submission. So when UFC fighters found that out, he did eventually lose due to submission. But it's funny because I got to see in Vegas, I got to see Lesnar win the World Heavyweight Championship from Frank Mir due to a rear naked choke. So I thought that was kind of cool that he won it back from submission. But you brought, like you said, wrestling fans went over there and they got to see, Lesnar go beyond the cusp of what he wasn't allowed to do in professional wrestling, that now he's actually exerting his physical strength for competitive fighting. And it was, like you said, it was no shock to anyone that he was going to be on top.
Not at all. And for him to be on pay-per-view marquees and main events in the heavyweight division, it's a no-brainer.
He drew money. He drew crowds. That Vegas arena, like I said, was sold out here and there. They could have sold that show out 19 times over. If your Brock Lesnar is your champion, I don't care what he's doing. If you're professional wrestling promotion, he's going to bring money.
And that's true because when they had UFC 200 out here,
Mm-hmm.
I think he was going against who was it, Jones or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And he his name alone sold out the T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah.
So Brock's a draw. See, I think Dana White had the best business under Brock Lesnar. He still has good business under Conor McGregor and whatnot. Okay, but Brock Lesnar at that time brought him a lot of money.
He was a shining star.
A lot of cheese, man. So to bring that kind of star power, and it did Brock a favor of elevating him up a little more. His superstar stock up a little bit more. So, which leads us now to go to 2012.
Well, yeah, because unfortunately, though, Lesnar during that time, he also plays around with some substances that the athletic commissions do not seem to be fit to use to enhance your workouts, if you know what I'm saying. So he stayed he went in he went in there a couple little bit times, and unfortunately that disallowed him from competing in certain states of the UFC. So Lesnar
Well,
disappeared again.
like hell, I mean, come on, who hasn't? Who's been an athlete who hasn't tried that? You know,
And back
I
then,
mean,
it was more common. Guys like Barry Bonds, they caught him doing that. They caught
yeah. Didn't Alex
McGuire.
Rodriguez?
I think
Alex
he was
Rodriguez
suspected
didn't he
of
do that
it. Yeah,
too?
there were a lot of. I think he was suspected of it. I think he,
Yeah.
the performance enhancing stuff during that time frame from like 2005 to 2009 ish. People were using it. There were like track stars that had used it. But it is dangerous stuff, especially for
It
guys, for
is.
wrestlers and guys of this stature that work out and like they do, because it messes with our testosterone, those kind of enhancers, and it can really hurt you, physically, and your reproductive organs as well, and
Of course.
it could really mess with you. So, and it's almost kind of a blessing in disguise that he got caught doing that, because if he hadn't
Yeah.
have got caught, he also wouldn't have found out that he had diverticulitis in the stomach as well,
Right.
which now we find out that Lesnar is sick, technically.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
Jeremy said, 2012, he comes back to wrestling. Yeah, tell us what happened there.
Yeah, he comes back in 2012, at WrestleMania 28, 10 year. It's kind of ironic. It's almost 10 years. Well, it's past 10 years since he initially debuted. And he comes back in Miami, and he had fives John Cena. What a way
Mm-hmm.
to come back, I think a lot of people were anticipating that he would, because there was a lot of rumors and rumblings. Even then, in 2012, when the internet dirt sheets weren't as big, but there were still
Right,
rumblings of
right.
Brock was coming back to the WWE. But what a way to come back and to take out the biggest dog, or at the time when Brock was there the first time, he wasn't even the biggest dog,
Not yet,
John
no.
Cena.
So it's almost like
And
Lesnar stepped away and Cena was in the place of Lesnar, and Cena
right,
rose to what we knew Cena to be. This was Cena on
well,
fire during April of 12.
yeah, he Cena just came off the loss with The Rock,
Mm-hmm.
because they had their encounter. But I love the rivalry so much because Brock said something very poignant. It's like, if I hadn't have left, you would have been carrying my
Right,
bags.
right.
And I couldn't help but to think, well, that could have been true. You know,
What would have happened if
if
Lesnar stuck around? Yeah.
I think it could have been true. John Cena would have never been at the rate that he would have been at. Unfortunately, it seems like things work out in the favor of I believe the universe always balances itself out to where it should be. And of course, Cena's the top guy. They're both equal in stature, but still, if Brock did not go off, Cena would have still been a mid-card guy, in my
He
opinion.
very well could have been. He definitely would not
So
have been pushed to the face. He definitely would not have been the poster. He definitely would not have been the guy on the
certainly
side
not.
of the truck. He definitely not would have been. Instead of Lesnar's face would have still been there. Definitely
Yep.
would have still been there.
But I don't think John Cena would have been around, to be
No.
honest. Yeah.
Well, they
But
have an Extreme Rules match, but
yeah,
Lesnar still lost that match, which was still cool. It was a very violent back and forth match.
that was
But
the first time in a while that we seen blood in a
right,
match like that.
because this was
Remember,
during the
they
PG
stopped.
era had changed. That stopped, like Jeremy
Yeah.
said, for a while.
But when you're dealing with someone like Brock Lesnar, he's been through a lot worse than being beat up with a chain. Okay,
Yeah.
he's beaten some of the baddest dudes in the octagon. A little blood don't hurt Brock Lesnar. Okay, so it had to get gritty. And it was really uncomfortable at times to watch because of the physicality in that match. I mean, Brock was still as dangerous as he ever was. Cena had to dig down deep, into trenches that I don't think he's been in before in a long time. So, I mean, that match was pretty solid.
Yep.
Brock's first match back.
It was
And then
very solid match.
And in that time in 2012, he's reuniting himself with Paul Heyman.
Yes, and one of my favorite moments out of this was that Heyman, he got in the contract, if you remember one of the episodes of Raw, they renamed Monday Night Raw to Monday Night Raw starring Brock Lesnar.
Starring Brock Lesnar. How can I ever forget?
Oh, man. And they also introduced Lesnar now as more of like that UFC fighter character. He's doing UFC moves, the Kimura lock. He's got the thicker gloves. He's doing MMA punches. So he's adding that to the character. And then
his MMA shorts.
Yeah, in the MMA shorts. And then Paul Heyman comes back that he's now in the legal representative form for Brock Lesnar. I liked that now you see that Heyman is his lawyer, his,
I love it. I just love that because they go together so well.
They do. They're hand in hand. They're peanut butter and jelly, those guys.
And you can't have a Brock Lesnar without a Paul Heyman. And that's what will be so concerning with if Brock does come back.
Mm-hmm.
Does Paul Heyman split his time between
the two of them?
The two of them, but you can't. You have to think of it this way. Roman requires full term attention.
Yeah.
So does
Brock Lesnar.
That's why when Paul Heyman was managing guys like Curtis Axel and Cesaro, it just didn't work. Because you had to, when Brock was there, you had to have full-time attention on Brock.
Yep.
You couldn't split your time. Especially with CM Punk as well, too, when they had that little stint together at the time. So, Paul's attention will always be towards Brock.
Yeah.
So, I think that kind of, but that's just my opinion, though. It could work. Who knows? They could create, like, a cool tandem.
Who knows what'll happen tomorrow? Who knows? But
I really just hope it's good stuff. But yeah, he goes and you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, Lesnar and Triple H set up the King of Kings match, and Lesnar beats Triple H, and he says that he's now the new King of King, and Heyman says he's done everything he's needed to do in the company, and now Lesnar is going to leave the company for good. If I had $5 for every time. If I had $1 million every time that Paul Heyman said that, man, he said that all the time. Yep, he's done everything there is to do. Lesnar is leaving the company for good.
Well, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
He didn't have to come back.
He didn't need to, no. But it wasn't until a year later that he did come back again, and this time he confronted Mr. McMahon. They kind of were doing the Stone Cold versus the Boss kind of angle again.
And then he had five spins.
Yep, F5 spins. Yep. And then
now.
Go ahead, yeah.
And now Triple H returns. Well, the thing is, I don't know if you mentioned it, but in SummerSlam 2012. Well, even beforehand, when we were talking about that little fight that Triple H and Brock Lesnar did, Brock Lesnar broke Triple H's arm. Okay, and so at Vengeance that year, or No Way Out, or whatever pay-per-view that was, that I think it was No Way Out. Triple H comes back and says, my arm's going to be healed by SummerSlam, so I challenge you to a match at SummerSlam. Brock Lesnar beats Triple H by re-breaking his arm again in the Kimura lock. Okay, so now Brock returns, causing havoc, F5ing Vince, and he had some sort of injury.
Yeah.
You know, the kayfabe injury of him being in the hospital and all that stuff. Triple H comes back, beats the holy oh my god out of him.
That's right, because Lesnar split his head square open. Yeah.
Yep, and his blood was coming out. So that leads up to a no holds barred match.
18 stitches in real life Lesnar needed to fix that. You know that. 18 of them.
Yeah. Because they sliced him open.
Sliced him right open like a samurai sword.
I mean, look, the dude wants to get hit like it's the real thing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so Triple H hit
Yep.
him hard, and busted him open.
Busted
okay,
him right open.
and leads them right to MetLife Stadium, WrestleMania 29. Beats Triple H beats beats Brock Lesnar
With the steel steps, what do you call it? Pedigreed him onto the steps.
Right.
And then also, randomly, if you remember the next night, strangely, just 3MB was out there, which, by the way, I love the 3MB that was together. Slater, McIntyre, Mahal. Oh my god. 3MB, man. But Lesnar just randomly beat the shit out of 3MB for no reason.
Right, that is right. Well, he was, no reason, but
yeah, but it just
character-wise, he's
you were just sitting out there and you just 3MB, poor 3MB, and this was during the skinny days of McIntyre. McIntyre was skinny then.
And he went from geek to a quarterback. Okay?
Yeah, he did.
I mean, if you really think about it,
the skinny days of McIntyre, and you just get
tiny.
they were all tiny back then. Slater, McIntyre, and Mahal, they were all they weren't, not saying they were out of shape or nothing, but they were thin. They weren't thin guys that didn't all have the muscle that they have now. If you look beforehand, Jinder Mahal,
they were jobbers.
Yeah.
At the time, so but now look at them now, guys. If you want to look up Heath Slater, Drew McIntyre, and Jinder Mahal, those guys are top of their game right now.
They all look great now, yeah.
And they all look great. And look at Jinder, he's huge. Look at McIntyre, he's even more huge.
He gets bigger by the week.
Yeah, God, I don't know, but he has such a regimen that's like really, really tough. But then it leads us to the next Extreme Rules.
Mm-hmm.
In April or May, it leads into a steel cage match.
Yeah.
In which Brock beats Triple H to end the darn thing, and
the final thing is over. Yeah. And then we get a little bit of Lesnar and Henry for a little bit, if I remember correctly.
For a tad.
They were still pushing that UFC style Brock Lesnar. He was breaking everybody's arms with the Kimura lock and things like that.
Yeah. But then ultimately it leads to probably one of the best SummerSlam matches. It leads to CM Punk and Brock Lesnar. Again,
no DQ, right?
Huge no DQ. And again, a big episode on CM Punk. I hope we can talk about CM Punk.
We will,
that great year, that 2011 year when he came as the Nexus and just the pipe bombs. I really want to talk about those. So that changed everything.
We will do an episode on Punk. Punk means the world to me. I love Punk.
Oh, I love him. Love him. Miss him in the wrestling ring. But anyway, so CM Punk and Brock Lesnar have the best match of that SummerSlam. In that no DQ classic. So you got that. Unfortunately, CM Punk comes up short, but that put a lot on CM Punk. He was very physical in that match. So, they were using chairs. They were beating the heck out of each other, man, in that match. But then I think that's the last time we actually see Brock Lesnar.
For a little bit, yeah. It's not until he comes back, I think it was in January after the Royal Rumble, Lesnar, they set up WrestleMania 30, Lesnar versus Taker.
Well, actually, they had a Big Show versus Brock Lesnar, actually.
Before that?
Let me go back.
Oh, okay.
Let me go back some. They had that at the Royal Rumble 2014, was Big Show versus Brock Lesnar. They had a little bit of a rivalry, not too much to divulge into.
Yeah.
But, Brock was looking for a WrestleMania opponent. And who else to come out? The baddest dude in the yard. And the man whose name is synonymous with WrestleMania is The Undertaker.
And here's the thing, though, with setting up to WrestleMania 21... or sorry, to WrestleMania 30 is that was the 21st match, 21-0 or whatever, 21-1. Um, I felt like a lot of us knew that this was the end of the streak, that this was the end of Undertaker being the reign, and like I think we mentioned it in our podcast before that eventually it was going to happen. Like they were going to do it eventually. We talked about it during the women's one. We said that the same thing happened with Asuka. Eventually, you have to do it, right? I've
Eventually, you're
never,
not.
and talking with other Undertaker fans and things like that, I've never felt that this was the appropriate thing to do. I did not think that this was the time to do it. I did not think I think Lesnar, would have been the man to do it, but I just did not think that at the time it did not settle well, and then with the execution of it, when we finally were building up to the match, everyone pretty much figured out like, okay, damn, he's probably not going to walk out of WrestleMania undefeated anymore. But
Well, yeah.
it was almost awkward in a sense. And afterwards, it was awkward too. The bitter taste in your mouth, the way the match played out. It was a nauseating feeling knowing it was over. It did not seem correct. It was just very awkward for me. The look on Taker's face alone kind of sold the story. It
Well,
felt awkward for him too.
well, in my opinions of the match, and I get it. A lot of people did feel like it was the end. Do we feel like it's appropriate that Brock Lesnar be the man to beat the streak? What favors does that do to Brock Lesnar? What favors does that do to the Undertaker? Well, I mean, for me, I thought we're gonna have 22-0
Yeah.
in New Orleans for sure, because I said, well, Brock Lesnar just doesn't seem like he's the guy to beat the streak. I just don't see it. The streak is too strong. Even through the progression of the match, I didn't feel that it was going to end. Even though it wasn't the Undertaker's finest moment, because think of Undertaker, he came off probably 4, 5, 6 WrestleManias with incredible matches.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the 4 year, look at the 2 years with Shawn Michaels, look at the 2 years with Triple H, and look at that one match
The
that
end
he
of
had
the
with
era,
CM Punk.
yeah. And the CM Punk match, everything. They were great WrestleMania moments.
Oh yes, but I saw Taker was a little fatigued,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when you're putting all your energy into all those matches, it's going to kind of come up to get you. But when that 3 count, man, when that third F5 hit, and that referee hit that 3 count, my stomach dropped.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever in my life felt more shocked than I was in that moment.
The whole arena just looked around like
is this
really?
right?
This really happened?
My thing was, I thought the 3 was a mistake. I literally thought the 3 was a mistake.
I think a lot of people would agree with you and say that they maybe thought the same thing.
And I thought, well, he might have had a shoulder up. I had to rewind 5 times to find like 15 different scenarios, because probably his shoulder was up. Probably it was a fast 3 count, but it wasn't. But to have your first, because that was the first pay-per-view on the WWE network,
Mm-hmm.
was WrestleMania. But to really hear 75,000 people gasp, and it have like nearly radio silence, and all you can hear is like little murmurs, like,
that's what I'm saying. The awkwardness there.
What happened? Is it really? Even Justin Roberts would tell you, and if you hear it in his interviews, Justin Roberts didn't even know. Justin Roberts was like, I'm just waiting for you guys to tell me what just happened. And then you hear it. Here's your winner, Brock Lesnar. And you see 21-1 all over that stadium, like a dark cloud. So, in my opinion, Brock didn't really need it.
No.
Even Undertaker admitted that he didn't need it.
It was not necessary at all.
No, it was not. It was very much shock value.
They ruined it too. They killed the magic of Undertaker ever walking into WrestleMania again. That magic was killed.
I can agree. I can agree. It kind of diluted him a bit. Now, I'm not saying it diluted him to the point where he's a shell of himself,
Mm-hmm.
but it just, him going into WrestleMania just didn't seem so important anymore. When you see Undertaker go into WrestleManias, you see that he's ready to fight. He's ready to defend his legacy. But what he should have just walked away from there.
He
To be
should have, yeah.
honest, he should have just walked away there, because now you're watching someone who, what is he fighting for? Why is he even coming to WrestleMania?
Yeah. And that's what I always saw, is that they shouldn't have done it, because that's exactly what happened, is why is he even here? What's the point anymore? What's the point of the draw? Because beforehand, like, especially like you mentioned those 4 matches, wrestling fans always knew, like, oh, Shawn Michaels was never going to beat Taker. We all knew that was going to happen. But the way that the matches played out, the little gasses at the 2 count of, the almost the 3 count was going to happen for Taker, but it never happened, right? But now when it finally happened, it's like you said, people were nauseous to the point of just like, I don't understand really, and it was strange. I just, in like I said, in my opinion, just never needed to happen. It was not needed.
Yeah, and even Undertaker admitted, in many interviews that he's done, that Brock didn't need it. He'd rather have won that night at WrestleMania because Brock didn't need that push, whatever it was. He'd rather have given it to a younger guy, maybe maybe Roman Reigns. I would buy Roman Reigns more than I would buy Brock Lesnar beating the streak, because that would do Roman a favor. Even though eventually he did beat him, but it's not the streak.
No.
It's not having this certainty at WrestleMania that Undertaker comes, beats people up, and leaves with another victory, And if they would have executed it the way it should have been, which I believe Roman Reigns should have been the guy, it would have done more for Roman. And in fact, it would have done much more for Roman because he has a long career ahead of him. It helped Brock in the short term of his dominance. Because if you look now, we can move on to SummerSlam.
Yeah, they pushed him back to the phase of Brock Lesnar being the unstoppable force Brock Lesnar again, because now,
which was not needed.
Was not needed, no. But now they're using this fuel that he's the one to retire Taker's streak. So he goes all the way to the World Championship match, like you said, at SummerSlam, and this match was like strange now, because this, for me, they're kind of diluting Cena here, because you just see Big Match John forever, to quote Justin Roberts. You got Big Match John for all this whole time, and he was on the very top, and now he's putting out the John Cena fire, because if you remember, 16 times Brock Lesnar German suplexed John Cena.
Yep, 16.
16 times.
16 German.
One for every title that Cena had.
That has today.
Yeah. One for every one, man. And then he beat him, and then now John Cena was just laying there in waste. And then they set up a Night of Champions rematch where Lesnar disqualified himself, or got disqualified because Seth Rollins interfered. And then that sets up Rollins joining the Authority to get added to Cena and Lesnar at the Royal Rumble in 2015. Lesnar won that match, and during that match, Lesnar broke a rib, and that was also the start of when, after that rib break, we start to find out that Lesnar has more issues with his abdomens and diverticulitis and things like that in real life in 2015. Now, for me,
it's all coming to light. Yep.
For me now, and no, not yet. I'm not going to talk about that yet. But it's all coming to light. This was right before the Suplex City bitch, Brock Lesnar, started to come around.
Yes.
So
correct.
He wins. Lesnar, they set up Lesnar versus Reigns. Reigns wins the Royal Rumble, right? And they set up for WrestleMania 31.
Yeah.
Um, and he was screaming during the match, "Suplex City, bitch."
I remember that, and I laughed.
Yep. And that became the catchphrase here on after, and the T-shirt and everything else. And it's "Suplex City, bitch." I loved that. I loved it. I thought it was so
It,
funny.
seconds after he said that, it became a meme among the wrestling
Mm-hmm.
world. And a lot of people were saying they loved it. Even on the next night on Raw, they were, chanting Suplex City. Um,
Don't forget though, Rollins cashed in Money in the Bank that night.
yes, he did.
Set
Yes,
the
he
world
did.
on fire. That was the burn it down. Rollins came out of nowhere there.
Yeah. Well, not quite the burn it down Rollins, but, he was there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he peaked. One of the greatest cash-ins in history.
I
And
didn't see that one
probably one of
coming.
the
I don't
more.
think anyone saw that shit coming.
Oh, I did.
You
I did.
did.
It was the perfect scenario because honestly, if Roman Reigns would have won that night, I'm pretty sure Levi Stadium would have rioted.
Right, right.
And I think you don't want your show. If I were Vince McMahon, I would not want that show to end up in a riot, or they would blow up. They would blow up. Literally, that crowd would have erupted in just such disdain and disgust. And you can't end WrestleMania that
No, you
way,
can't.
ever. So they had to do what they had to do because it only made sense. I said Rollins is cashing in.
And it was
I
the
even told
right
my
thing to
brother that.
do,
I
for
said,
sure.
oh yeah, and I said you have no choice because you can't push Brock any more than where
Mm-mm.
he is, right?
And if you remember the
You,
next night on Raw, the Suplex City bitch chance, like you were talking about,
yeah, yeah.
and then Lesnar, I think he played a little bit to the crowd here because he went and he beat the shit out of Booker T. He beat the shit out of JBL. He beat the shit out of Michael Cole because he was pissed off about what happened. And then
He
you
F5'd him out of his shoes.
he F5'd him out of his shoes. You hear the crowd, they're losing it, they're eating it up, and he picks up a cameraman. And he hurts the cameraman too. You know that he was eating it up, man. You know Lesnar was eating that shit up like cherry pie, bro. Suplex
Oh
City,
man.
bitch. I think that was Lesnar's most crowning smile ever. That he was finally, the ego was starting to fill at that moment.
Well, he created probably the best catchphrase
Yep.
uh, in history, and probably made him millions more dollars richer
Mm-hmm.
because of that. So he knew what he was doing. But the carnage he left behind, man. But the only downfall is why did they bring Byron Saxon there to independently announce the whole rest of the night? That was
Yeah.
the worst thing they could have done.
I don't know why that
But
happened either.
I digress. That was funny though. It was when he was so upset, and they're like, "We want our rematch tonight," and probably that was one of the more hotter crowds
It
of
was a
Raw
hot
after
crowd, yeah.
WrestleMania. Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't. Man, you couldn't do nothing. They would boo you or cheer you. I mean, I love the Raw after WrestleMania crowds. I mean,
Yeah.
they're not the same as they used to be. I think right after that, it was just not the same. But um,
That was a hot
anyway, you don't.
crowd, yeah.
Oh, one of the best. I love that Raw after WrestleMania. One of my favorites.
Well, you don't see
Um,
Lesnar for a while, and then randomly, Beast in the East, right? So at this
yep,
time in
Beast
my
in the East.
life, giving you guys to let you in personally in my life, at this time in my life, I was already into the Navy and things, so I was already kind of I wasn't around during this time, but I heard about Beast in the East, so I was hoping that you could educate me a little bit about Beast in the East. I didn't understand exactly what happened.
Well, Beast in the East was actually a WWE Network special.
Mm-hmm.
It was from it was from Sumo Hall in Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first live broadcast from Tokyo, so we had to stay up till 3 a.m. just like what other people do internationally when they watch WWE. We had to stay up at 3 a.m. and watch the live show. It really wasn't much of anything, to be honest. It was just like a very special show. You saw that's the night actually Finn Balor won the NXT Championship the first time.
Right, right.
So he returns home to Japan, and it was kind of a it was kind of a homecoming, a win, and he beats Kevin Owens um, in Sumo Hall
In
and
Sumo
becomes the
Hall,
NXT
yeah.
champion. Yeah,
I think
becomes
those
NXT
guys,
champion.
we
So
got a couple guys in the chats here. In VR and Fallen Revenger. I think is that what you guys are talking about? The in Sumo Hall, the Beast in the East. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. We're talking Brock Lesnar tonight. Um,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys. If you guys are new to
And
this, join us tomorrow
yeah,
night. We'll also be back for the Royal Rumble as well.
and then he goes against Kofi Kingston.
Right.
Brock Lesnar goes against Kofi Kingston that night. Uh, Not much. Like I said, not much. So it was just a
Just a
WWE Network
thing, yeah.
special. It was just our first live broadcast from Tokyo, Japan, um, and they want to, which kind of sets the precedent now. Where they have those international live pay-per-views on the
Yeah.
network. So that's really all it was. Nothing really too special. Just Finn Balor was special.
That's awesome. Yeah. I definitely have to watch Beast in the East. But
You should. It's not that bad.
so Taker comes back at Battleground, and
Yep.
he interferes with Lesnar's match, and then Undertaker says that he attacked not for ending the WrestleMania streak. That Undertaker was trying to say that's not the reason he was back, but Heyman was saying that was the reason he was back. They're kind of going back and forth. So in storyline and in like real life too, it was kind of confusing a little bit of what was going on here.
Of course.
It was just a little unsure of what the exactly was happening. But you saw Taker. I think this is around the time that the Hell's Gate submission hold started to go away. Because they had a match and Lesnar, he hit him with the low blow, and then after, and like it was like almost like, huh, what happened? Like the referee did not see anything, and then that Undertaker supposedly was supposed to tap out to the Kimura lock, but the referee didn't see it. So then Lesnar thought, okay, let's end it with a low blow, but that was just like confusing after that. So then Undertaker applied Hell's Gate, and he accidentally made Brock Lesnar pass out on accident. So they didn't know what the hell was going on with the finish. Like the whole finish was botched, and it unnecessarily led to Lesnar passing out due to the Hell's Gate.
Well, the whole rivalry the second time around. Why is the Undertaker coming back? Of course, it's
Right.
for the streak. It's
Yeah.
to avenge the streak. What else?
So why not
What
say
else?
that? Right.
Not to say it outright. Correct. And that's what I was thinking the whole time. I said, well, they're like, oh, Undertaker's coming for revenge. Yeah, he's coming for revenge. Of course. It would have been more better if it was at a WrestleMania, to be honest with you. But it just didn't make sense. It was filler. No. It was very filler. And it just, to me, it didn't really satisfy as a fan.
And there wasn't really much going on with Lesnar after that either, because then you had weird stuff like when he had the strange rivalry with Bo Dallas, and then they somehow, I don't understand, I think it was WWE just kind of acknowledging the strangeness of that match, because they gave at the Slammy Awards the Undertaker Hell in a Cell match with that weird ending, the match of the year. I thought that was kind of funny that they did that.
Yeah,
Then Lesnar feuded a little bit with the New Day, and then the League of Nations, which you guys remember was Sheamus, Barrett, Rusev, and Del Rio. He feuded a little bit with Owens. He feuded then with the Wyatt family, just a hair. Um, and then they went to the Royal Rumble. Lesnar was number 23. He eliminated 4 people, and then he was eliminated by Wyatt and the rest of the Wyatt family. And they set up that 2-1 handicap match between the Luke Harper and the Wyatt family. Brody Lee, John Huber, may he rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then finally we get there to Lesnar, Reigns, and Ambrose. Now during this time, me in my life, I kind of also this I was deployed during this whole time, and I missed out, and I didn't come back to anything during 2016. I didn't come back until 2017. So I was hoping you could kind of talk about what happened during the late 2016 going into 2017.
Oh yeah, definitely. Probably one of the more lighter years for Brock Lesnar,
Yeah.
to be honest. So again, yes, he goes back into we go to 2016, and we go to the Royal Rumble. He does enter in number 23. That was one of the more unique um, Royal Rumble matches because Roman Reigns had to defend his title in the Royal
Mm-hmm.
Rumble match, so which brought the stakes a little bit higher. Um, yeah, he did feud a little bit with the Wyatts here and there. But then at Fastlane 2016, it was a triple threat between uh, Reigns, uh, Lesnar, and Dean Ambrose. Whoever wins faces Triple H for the world title. I think that was one of the better. Uh, it was a pretty good match,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. Um, but eventually Roman Reigns wins that match, of course, takes on Triple H at WrestleMania. But surprisingly enough, Dean Ambrose steps into the plate and he has a pretty intense rivalry with Dean Ambrose, which leads to a no holds barred street fight at WrestleMania. Very lackluster match, to be honest.
Yeah, I heard
I
it didn't
think,
live up to
you
the
know,
hype.
no, and I feel like they could have done a lot more crazier stuff, you know. But unfortunately, uh, from the stories that I've heard, Brock Lesnar was just pure lazy and didn't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't believe Dean Ambrose, John Moxley, as we know him today, to was not really a viable opponent for him,
And
and that's why he
also,
kind of took the. Mhm.
during this time in real life, Lesnar also went back to playing around with some of the
UFC.
performance enhancers as well,
Yep,
and was
and he
also
was
doing stuff with the UFC at the same time.
right. He was still training for UFC 200 as well too. So, but that
He
happened.
failed
We
2
don't see
drug
Brock
tests during that time, and WWE did not suspend him either, but UFC did.
once again. The big corporate giant versus UFC. This is
Yeah.
sports entertainment versus
Mm-hmm.
you know. This is sports entertainment versus actual sports.
Right.
You don't really have to. WWE does not
They didn't
really.
have to really
I
take
don't
action.
think
No.
they don't have to follow the commission guidelines
No.
as much. So for him, it was just like, okay, I can just take a break there. But anyway, he, uh, we don't see Brock for a little bit. He does his thing over the summer, but then he has a feud with Randy Orton. This is at the time when we already had our second draft, our second brand extension. He has a bit of a rivalry with Randy Orton. That's the first time they ever met. Once again, lackluster.
I read
But
during this time too that that some of the wrestlers were saying that Lesnar had an issue with anger, and what we talked about earlier with the performance enhancing stuff. It does mess with your testosterone, and going along with testosterone is your ability to process anger as a man. And
yeah,
he apparently sometimes went off script with Randy Orton, is what Orton's been said, that he went off script, that Lesnar took it a little bit too far, and he's been known to do that a couple times. But notably, Orton received a head wound, and Orton said it was off script, and they
yeah,
Orton needed a severity of stitches to repair that head wound.
because he was bleeding quite bad. I don't know if you went back and watched that match, which I suggest you
I
do.
did, yeah. Because when I read about that,
He
I was like, wow,
his
really?
the corner of his elbow clipped Orton in the side of the head because he was really hitting him with them punches, like he was actually fighting in the UFC. But
Mm-hmm.
then when he got his elbow, he wow and just whacked Randy Orton right in the head, and I mean it
Might as
was
well have been a
blood
hot knife.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Because if you catch one of them elbows, it's gonna bust you open,
Yeah.
you know. But I think it was a match stoppage, a TKO. I think they declared it
Because of the
uh,
blood.
because of the blood, I believe,
And most
because he
notably,
was unable.
that really has never really happened in wrestling before. That they couldn't
Nope.
get blood like that under control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Who else is gonna do it but
Mauro
Brock Lesnar?
Ranallo. Yeah, of course. Mauro actually called that match, which was actually one of his best calls.
Mamma mia.
So it was, Mamma Mia was good. But, Mauro actually zeroed in the attention of that, because, Mauro, he's MMA, combat sport. So he knows in those
Mm-hmm.
situations what to say and what to do.
Yeah,
So
he did.
it
Yeah.
made it right. So Lesnar goes off again. WWE 2K16 now includes Goldberg as a playable character in the
Okay.
video game,
Okay.
and it opens the door. People were wondering, are we get because Goldberg showed up on the WWE 2K16 or no, it was 2K. I'm sorry, it was not WWE 2K16. It was 2K17. My
17.
bad.
Okay.
Um, so they see Bill Goldberg on commercials, and there were a lot of rumors and innuendo going around, like, are we going to see Bill Goldberg wrestle again? And if so, are we going to see Brock? I think you turn the page a little bit ahead to late October of 2016. Bill Goldberg returns to Denver, Colorado. I think that's where it is.
Yep.
And he said,
After all this time, right?
Right,
Yep.
after all this time, it's been, I think it was at that time, 12 long years
Mm-hmm.
since that time. And he's like, maybe we should leave this fantasy match in the video game. And he's like, well, I got one more ass kicking left. I got one more jackhammer left. And Brock Lesnar, you're next. And at that time, he was like, you're last.
You're last, yeah.
At the time.
Well, and they set up Survivor Series, right? Is the end.
Survivor Series.
That was the minute 30 seconds match.
Yes, you are correct. A minute 30 seconds shocked the crap out of me.
Can you imagine? Sure. That's nuts. A minute 30 seconds.
To Brock Lesnar. And I said, wait a minute. And my dad actually came over, and we're like, watching, and he was like, oh, I like Goldberg, because, my dad used to videotape Goldberg all the time.
Right,
back,
right.
In the 90s for WCW. So he was like, oh, yeah, Goldberg. Let's do Goldberg. And then all of a sudden, it's like, spear. No, yeah, it was a spear. Brock's on the ground. He shook.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, seconds later, it's like a jackhammer.
Yep, the jackhammer. It was
another spear and then a jackhammer. And then before you know it, it's 1, 2, 3. I'm like, what the heck? Are you serious? It was one of those moments. A minute 36 haunted him, which leads us to the next evolution. Leads us to 2017 now. Goldberg, The Undertaker, and Brock Lesnar are in the Royal Rumble match.
Yep.
Okay. So now Brock and Goldberg meet again, and then Goldberg eliminates Brock right out of the match in a matter of seconds again.
Yep. He's got the one up over him the whole time.
Always.
Yep.
And then now
they challenge, right? He challenged him to WrestleMania 33.
Yes.
Yes.
But we have a pay-per-view called Fastlane, and then Goldberg challenges Kevin Owens
and wins the title.
and wins the title, which I was like, okay, now this is getting ridiculous.
It's getting ridiculous. Now Goldberg
Ridiculous.
is the
The,
Universal fucking
the,
champion.
right. And I'm like, for what? For
Yeah,
what?
and we
And
we
this is
forgot
where
to
I heard.
mention earlier. We mentioned it
Oh,
earlier in the broadcast, but when we talked about that Orton was the final world champion, the gold belt was retired. They gave Lesnar the new world heavyweight championship, and then the Universal Championship was then placed on Raw in its place after that.
correct. That was after the first, we had our second brand extension, so they needed a world champion.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Goldberg beats Kevin Owens. Sadly, if that didn't happen, we would have had Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens for the Universal title, which I would have much
I would
preferred
have
seeing.
preferred that. I wish we would have seen that one, man,
Yeah,
because
and
we
I was there for the Festival of Friendship for that one. That one was good when Kevin Owens turned his back on Chris Jericho.
yeah.
But anyway, we go to WrestleMania 33. They close out their rivalry. Brock now has the hold of the Universal Heavyweight Championship, and AJ, you can take it from there.
And that is where like you said, he got the hold of it. That this is now the time of the Mad King Lesnar. That he held on to this and never let it go. But most notably, though, after beating Goldberg, he was the first person to ever be WWE champion and then Universal champion at the time. So that's
Correct.
notably too. And then he fought again at inaugural at the Great Balls of Fire in July. He retained against Samoa Joe.
What a name for a pay-per-view.
Yeah, the Great Balls of Fire. I was like, what the hell?
I said, you guys really ran out of ideas now.
So at this time of my life and in my personal life, I had just received an injury in the service that required me to have surgery, and I had a little bit of time off, and I remember the morning of my surgery, in the wrestling world, this is when Roman Reigns and Lesnar start to fight, start to rival again. I had just started coming back. I remember the morning of I see Lesnar as a Universal Champion. I remember seeing Lesnar as the champion before I had surgery that day. I remember that. Um, uh, they had the Fatal 4-Way match at SummerSlam. That was the match that I had. That was the day that I had surgery, and I remember they started the surgery in the morning, and I watched Lesnar go in as the champion, but I didn't know what happened. And I know it was going to come later on in the network. I was going to watch it later that night after I had surgery. And they did the Fatal 4-Way match between Joe, Reigns, Strowman, and Lesnar. He held on to that. He beat him. He pinned Reigns. Strowman, he attacks him. They have the title match at No Mercy, which Lesnar won again, which then set up AJ Styles versus Lesnar in the champion non-title match at Survivor Series, which was all right. It wasn't a bad
Great match.
I thought it was pretty interesting. It was like AJ Styles like on top, trying to overcome the Beast. I thought the build up to it was really good. Yeah.
I thought it was great. I loved that match.
Yeah. I think it was appropriate at the time. Though definitely Lesnar versus AJ was one of the better things to happen out of that year.
That's true.
Yeah. But it was a good match. Yeah, back and forth. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Brock works great with smaller people.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
So then this is now where when I say the time of the Mad King, because this is now where we start to not see Brock Lesnar come to work very often anymore. But he is coming back here and there, and he starts his feud with Reigns, who won in the Elimination Chamber match at Elimination Chamber, I should say, to be the number one contender for the title at WrestleMania 34. But during this entire time, Lesnar didn't go to work. He did not show up to work. And the title was never seen. So for me personally in real life, I'm trying to see this new champion who I didn't really have any. I'd never seen the Universal Championship before, and I didn't know. I was trying to see who this champion was, and of course I knew who Lesnar was, but I'd never seen him in this aspect. But he never was around. He was never there. He never came to
Yeah.
work. So then they started to
No.
use that in real life too, and I think Vince liked that a little bit because Reigns would talk about how all the time that I'm here at work when you're not. But that was so stupid, man, because it was like he had some kind of fucking grasp over the title that we could never see. Like, literally, I think he was on there 4 times that year we saw the Universal Championship. It was bullshit. I don't care if you're
Yeah.
sick. I don't care if you're the most paid actor or sports entertainer that WWE has. You are the champion. You're supposed to be the champion. Stop this eluding of, oh, Brock Lesnar returns. It's stupid. No. You take your happy ass to work and you walk down to the ring. If you're the heel champion, you fuck with the crowd. You mess with your challenger like you get paid all those millions of dollars to do. You don't sit at home cradling the championship, watching it, probably not even watching it, and also trying at the time was pretending to be UFC again as the Universal Champion and setting up things with UFC's heavyweight champion, but you couldn't stay off the fucking dope. You were hitting the performance enhancing again. So stop. You're ruining your career in one aspect, and you're tainting the championship. You're tainting the fan base on the other. So Lesnar's not particularly in the great public image right now, especially when people find out that it wasn't just the diverticulitis that he was away for. It was also the dope.
Yeah, he was coming on suspension for that one.
You ruined it, man. You held on to the Universal Championship. You just lacklusterly just spit all over it.
Yeah, he did. In a sense, a lot of fans were fatigued.
Yeah.
You know, fans were fatigued because he had such a heavy hold on the title.
That's why I say it was the reign of Mad King Lesnar.
Yeah, sure.
And then WrestleMania 34, right? That whole time we set it
Yes.
up, they did the fake MMA guys went out, the U.S. Marshals. They pretended to arrest Roman Reigns. You remember that?
Yeah.
Lesnar went out there handcuffed and beat the shit out of him. So Lesnar came back once or twice during that time. Seriously, on the road to WrestleMania, and you're the champion, and you come back once or twice. I was at this point. I was
Yeah.
like, come on, man. Lesnar lost me as a fan at that point. I had no respect at that point. And then we think, oh, finally, WrestleMania's here. Reigns is gonna take the title. We're finally gonna get the championship that we deserve. The real champion. He's gonna be a champion finally. And then if you remember that night, Lesnar went out there and grabbed his elbow and just smashed it across Roman's forehead, splitting it open. And then Lesnar retained at WrestleMania 34, and everyone's like, "Are you kidding me? The fuck? We're still holding on to this? He's still gonna walk out of WrestleMania a champion? God damn it.
Well,
Now what do we do?" And then, Jeremy, we come to find out it's all because of our good friends, the Saudi fucking Arabians. Because
well,
Lesnar re-signed to go to the greatest Royal Rumble.
yes. I was there that night at WrestleMania for that match, and let me tell you, when I say nobody was invested in that match
No.
at all.
Nobody was
I
happy.
mean, well, the thing is, people were bouncing beach balls around, and security was scrambling because there was like 10, 15 beach balls, being thrown around in my area. I wish I had the recording still. For some reason, that recording got deleted. I swear to you before God. But
That's weird.
But people were like bouncing beach balls around, so security was like running all up and down the place trying to get them to. You're not supposed to have those at events at all.
No.
But anyway, it was kind of a shocker to me too that
Well, it goes
I
to
just
show you
sure
that
that-
nobody gave a fuck because it was Lesnar who tainted this whole story.
Sure. I mean, it wasn't something that we knew. But a lot of people also had a feeling that it was going to be the coronation of Roman Reigns. So they said, well, Roman's going to do it because he didn't get that chance a few years back to do it. So everyone had that feeling that Roman was for sure going to walk away.
And for me, man,
but
I was at a
I
pretty
wasn't
low
sure.
time in my life at this time, and I was
Yeah,
looking to wrestling as an escape like it used to be, and it
sure.
wasn't anymore, you know. And a
Yeah,
lot of that was Brock Lesnar's fault. And I
yep,
stopped caring about the championship. I stopped caring about Monday Night Raw. I started focusing. I mean, SmackDown has always been one of my favorite shows, but I started
sure.
caring more about SmackDown. Started caring more about. Got invested in the stars over there. So like after WrestleMania and stuff, when they were setting up the things with the Greatest Royal Rumble and over in Saudi Arabia and Cain Velasquez, or was that the Cain Velasquez time? I forget.
Nope,
No,
nope. That was
the Greatest
way,
Royal
way too
Rumble,
far. Yep.
the fucking that it didn't matter what was going on. I didn't even watch that really. I think I watched the Greatest Royal Rumble, the actual match itself because I was
Match.
interested in the
Yep.
50, but I didn't watch the actual show at all. I fast forwarded to that. But at this time, Lesnar disappeared again for 3 more fucking months. Still,
Correct.
3 more months gone again from television.
Yep.
You are the worst. Why do you do that? Do your job, man. Do your job or
Well,
give the belt to someone else so they can do their job.
it's mainly Vince McMahon too. You kind of have to blame him a bit
Oh, Vince
for it
loved it. He
because
played into it.
well, of course, because
He said himself
he's
Lesnar
the
has special privileges that other people don't.
more privileges than Cena has,
Yes.
to be honest. But yeah, he doesn't really come back. He's gone for a few more months. He comes back to TV.
And
Roman
Kurt
Reigns
Angle
puts
during
in
this
his
time, he also uses that part of the real life storyline into the story on TV because he says if Lesnar doesn't show up to work, he's gonna have no choice but to get rid of the Universal Championship.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep,
And at that time, I was like, all right, they're doing something good here. At least Kurt Angle's acknowledging the fact that this is now a stupid story.
well, creative, yeah.
Yeah.
They're letting, yeah, they're kind of zeroing in on it.
Yeah.
But of course, it leads to Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar meeting at the Barclays Center
SummerSlam, right?
in 2018, and so yeah, I mean, Roman did it. Good
Finally.
match. What scared me the most was Braun Strowman because he was the Money in the Bank contract winner at the time. So it's kind of a.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dang it. I kind of don't want Roman, but I don't want Braun either. So, and I definitely don't want Brock. So if any of you can just,
Yeah, Roman wasn't particularly in the good public image again either. He still wasn't,
No,
he was trying to come back to it. They were trying to bring him back, but he
but
wasn't,
at the same time,
he was still being booed a lot.
but still, people, they were happy because Brock didn't have a stranglehold.
No.
And
After
how refreshing
504 days, Jeremy. 504 days he
I
was the Universal Champion. And how
I
often
know.
did we even see him during those days? Maybe a 26, 30, maybe?
Not even
Who knows? 4 times a year.
you yeah,
There's
but that's just a special
365 days a year the last time I checked.
I know. But like you said, it comes back to the special privileges
Mm-hmm.
again. But how
Finally, Reigns
refreshing
defeat him.
was it?
Finally. Thank God.
Sure.
Right?
Well, how refreshing is it for Roman Reigns to, have a title
Right.
and it being on TV every week and being defended
He was
every
the
week?
defending champion. He was fighting champion. He said, I'm going to
And,
bring back the prestige back to this championship," which honestly was a championship that never had any prestige to begin with.
well, no, because it's a new title
Mm-hmm.
and you're considering it a world title, but it's good to build on the legacy.
So Reigns fights
Roman
with
gives,
Strowman, yeah,
and then
a
and
little
then
bit.
Reigns goes to the next night and defends against Finn Balor,
Mm-hmm.
against a person who never really lost the Universal Championship.
That
Unfortunately,
was
what a
awesome,
sad time
yeah.
that was. But it was a good match. But then you fast forward
Hell in
to
a
a couple
Cell.
months later, Hell in a Cell.
Strowman
Of
says,
course,
I'm not going to announce
cash
when,
in.
I'm not going to surprise, I'm going to announce it," and he hands the championship or the contract over and says, "This is when
Yep,
I'm going to do it." So that was interesting to see
exactly.
that, but also at the same time, the money we can talk about the Money in the Bank on one, they ruined. That was when the Money in the Bank started to die around that time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you see that, and he kicks down the door of the cell, which really doesn't do anything. Well, we don't really know because a couple weeks later, Roman Reigns announces that he has
Yeah.
leukemia again.
And it just made me
So
so
yeah,
mad though because we didn't get to see the Strowman Reigns match, especially during Hell in a Cell. Like if it ended in a no contest, and it was just it didn't
right.
have an ending. Strowman wasted
It
the
was a
title.
it was a very wild contest,
Yeah,
to be honest. It was very wild. It was very. You had Ambrose, or Moxley as we know him today, involved. You had Rollins involved. You had whoever, this, that, and the other involved. It just was chaos.
and then
It didn't really answer. Yeah.
unfortunately, like you said in real life, Roman Reigns, aka he comes out to the ring and says, "Hey, my name is Joe." And at that point,
Yep.
we all tuned into him and said, "Oh, damn, okay, this is real." And he said,
Yep.
"I've got leukemia. I can't. I've relapsed. I can't continue to wrestle." But he says, "I'm going to be back. I promise." It's not a retirement
Yep.
speech. Blah blah blah. But unfortunately, now because he laid down the championship in the ring, now we have a vacant title. We knew it was going to go right back to Lesnar, and as a fan, we were like, "Damn it, fuck." How that, the universe couldn't have done this any worse way, because now the championship got handed right back to Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel. Overseas again, a new championship is crowned away from home in 3 minutes. Lesnar becomes the first two-time Universal Champion, and here we go again. It's the same thing. He doesn't show up to work again. Not until he was scheduled to face AJ Styles again at Survivor Series 2. AJ Styles versus Lesnar 2, which I thought was going to be cool because I thought maybe AJ Styles would beat him this time. But then
Mm-hmm.
Styles loses to Bryan, so instead we have Daniel Bryan versus Lesnar in this like fucking weird lethargic match against Bryan and Lesnar that I was just watching like, oh, this is just strange. I don't know why
How
I'm
is it
watch.
strange?
I don't know
I
why
thought
I'm
it was
watching
very
it.
good.
I thought it was strange.
I thought it was very good. To me, it was strange because it was heel versus heel.
Mm-hmm.
That's strange.
Yeah.
But I thought it was pretty solid. Once again, Brock works well with smaller folk.
Smaller folk. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, a wild 2018. Of course, Brock. That was the year Raw swept Survivor Series,
Mm-hmm.
and so you know you don't see Brock again until January,
Yep, he
and
disappears
then
again for quite some time. I think that time he disappeared again for like 56 days, which is now the second time period as a champion that you're just pissing all over the place and showing up whenever the fuck you want. Because that's the appropriate thing to be
well,
doing.
yeah, and he faces Finn Balor at that year at 2019's
Mm-hmm.
Royal Rumble.
Which was an awesome
At
match. I
that,
liked it. It was good.
yeah, I wish it was a little more
Yeah, it was.
because it
It
was just
ended
a
quickly.
little. Yeah, it ended too fast. I thought they could have had what they had at Survivor Series, Brian and AJ. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Poor Finn. But that's a year also that Becky Lynch wins the Royal Rumble, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, a new formidable opponent in Seth Rollins wins the Royal Rumble, which starts probably the hottest year for Seth
Yeah,
Rollins.
the man on fire is Seth Rollins at that
Then
point.
yeah, and then
WrestleMania
you get to
35.
WrestleMania
Yep. Rollins
in a
wins
very
dirty. Interestingly here, because they showed up like, what else is Rollins? What else can Rollins do to defeat the Beast? What else can he do to be the Beast Slayer? And he hits him with a low blow,
well,
pinning
of course.
pinning Lesnar at 35. Yeah.
Well, it was a very shocking turn of events because well, you're having the Universal title, Brock Lesnar, start WrestleMania. That's a very interesting move on
Right.
that part. But yeah, but Rollins wins,
And
which
for me, I'm jumping for joy because I'm like, yes, finally, We get rid of
Oh
Lesnar. The
yes.
pest control situation was called. They came out and sprayed. Lesnar's gone. He's no longer coming back. Oh, thank
Yeah.
God. We don't see him
I
for
was happy about
we
that.
don't see him for a little bit. He disappears. Because at that point he is Universal Champion for 156 days, and I think we saw him for a total of I think 10 or 12 during those time, at least.
Of
Not
course.
not very often. So we go. We're into May, and then at this time we're into the Money in the Bank stuff again. We need new Money in the Bank people. Um, and there was the eight. This is when they did the 8-man Money in the Banks. They started changing to the 8-man Money in the Banks. Sami Zayn was scheduled to be in the Money in the Bank, but he was beat up before the match, and so they said that Zayn wasn't going to start the match. But for me as a fan, and I think everyone else was in the story, was like none of us thought what happened at Money in the Bank was going to happen at all.
No.
But you see Mustafa Ali climb the ladder. So they start the match. Sami Zayn doesn't show up. Mustafa Ali at the very end of it, he's got his hands on the championship, on the contract. You see him holding it, and I'm just the look on his face. Unless he sold this so well, I don't know if they told him that this was going to happen beforehand, because when you heard Lesnar's music, you just heard everyone in the ring look to the left towards the entrance ramp. You saw everyone at home just go, no, 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 not again. No, they're not doing this. No, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? They're doing it. And Lesnar running down the ring, and he pushes over a ladder, and it smacks a cameraman in the head because Lesnar doesn't give a fuck. And poor cameraman gets fucking knocked out, and they cut away from that. Poor guy, just fucking there trying to do his job. And Lesnar runs up and pushes Mustafa off awkwardly, by the way. This is so strange. Mustafa is just holding on to the championship. Like, dude, you're not that scared. Just reach up and grab it. Like, he could have, like, fallen or something. I don't know. But he's just standing there waiting for Lesnar to come to the ring. Lesnar awkwardly climbs the thing, pushes him off. He wins Money in the Bank. And we're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Because now it's all over again. It's going to be all over him all over again. And
Yeah.
then he cashed in his contract to win the championship back from Rollins at Extreme Rules. Oh,
Yep.
no, man, not again. We were like, damn it, here we go again.
Yeah, I don't get why they did that. I really don't. But
To
I mean, you
Lesnar's
can
now the
always.
three-time champion at this point, and I was like, are you kidding, man? Come on.
There was hundreds of ways you could have diverted that
And they ruined Money in the
without
Bank
him
again,
winning.
because that's now 2 years in a row where we didn't get a normal Money in the Bank either.
Yeah, I mean, it's they could have diverted that 100 different ways without involving the Money in the Bank
No.
briefcase. And you could have been you're Brock Lesnar. You can do whatever you want. You can always have inserted yourself right
Right.
away. You know
Well, they set
that
up
that's another one. But they wanted a shocker. They
a
wanted a
shocker, yeah.
championship. But it was more for Rollins too. Because they wrestle again at Survivor Series. I'm not Survivor Series. I'm sorry,
SummerSlam.
SummerSlam,
Yeah.
and which was a great match. I think one of the best that they had. And Rollins wins the title again.
Well, it's just like Skull
So
says in the comment right here. Thanks for joining us, Skull. He says, I can't believe Vince doesn't see that Brock doesn't matter to us anymore. He didn't. He didn't matter at all. He didn't matter to nobody, Skull, when after he slapped us all in the face, he might as well have just pulled down his pants and forced us to kiss his ass after we didn't
he's
see
done that
him.
several times.
After we didn't see him for multiple times, so none of us cared. The illusion of Brock Lesnar was over. I was one of the biggest Lesnar fans growing up. I still am. Sometimes I have the UFC game. I never deleted it because you can still playing with Lesnar in that game. I loved Lesnar. Like I said, I watched him win the world championship more times than I can count. I watched him do that in Las Vegas. I was a huge fan of his. Thank you for lurking, Skullroot. But yeah, oh, you've been making attires for your audience for your game. I need to do that too. But anyways, yeah, he would. No one cared. No one cared. They put him in UFC 4. Really? I haven't played that in a while. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, Jeremy, no one cared. No one cared, but
No.
they set up the match at SummerSlam, and at that point, no one was invested at all.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
when Rollins won, it wasn't anything to write home about.
no, it's not nothing to write home about. I mean, I would give compliments to the match. It was
Yeah,
very good. It was a really great contest. Was it really needed?
no.
Probably not. But, again, lack of star power
Well,
kind of
Lesnar
drove it
disappears
to
again after
Brock.
that, and
He goes into seclusion.
we finally think that now the Lesnar problem is gone. Finally, that he can just sail the ship has sailed. He's gone.
Nope. WWE moves to Fox. SmackDown moves to Fox,
And I know how
and
you
on
feel
the
about this, so I'm gonna
first,
let you tell us what happened.
uh, WWE moves to SmackDown to Friday nights and moves it live to Fridays. Um, and the main event marquee match is the WWE Championship. So Kofi Kingston, off the hottest run he's ever had,
So hot,
versus
man.
Brock
First of
Lesnar.
all, coming off of the win at WrestleMania with Daniel
Yeah.
Bryan, the whole story that they told was incredible.
Yep.
And then he had an amazing summer. Kofi was on top, man. It was awesome to see Kofi Kingston in that light. It was awesome to see him that when that 3 count happened at WrestleMania to see him holding the
Mm-hmm.
WWE title. That was amazing.
And his son
His son
holding the
holding,
title
yeah.
too.
I remember texting
You
you. I
know,
said, "Did you see that? Did you just see that?"
yeah, you did, and I said, oh yeah, I saw that. It was really cool. But yeah, Kofi Kingston was on the hottest run of his career ever,
And Lesnar does what
and
Lesnar does, man. He takes that ice cold bucket of water and pours it on the fire.
he surely did. I mean, in 30 seconds, the title reign, not even that, I think a lot shorter, the title reign of Kofi Kingston came to a very abrupt halt.
Yeah,
Um,
very
to
short.
me, I
Boom.
felt that it could have been a great match, but again, uh, it goes to WWE creative. It goes back to Brock Lesnar and how he is, and he had another stranglehold on a title. I felt that Kofi should have had a fighting chance
He should
because
have.
uh, he fought valiantly throughout. The, if you look at all that time up until Brock taking the title from him, Kofi had an effective competitive title reign,
Yeah, he did.
and
It was a
he
good title
fought
reign.
and he fought for everything, and to see him lose it in a matter of seconds to someone like Brock Lesnar is just not.
It didn't
Just
sit
didn't
well
sit
with
well
me.
with me.
Yeah.
But it brings us to 2020 because he's holding on to the title. Well, did he compete at Survivor Series
No.
in 19? Yes, he did.
No, he did. Yeah.
He went against Mysterio for the championship. Pretty solid match. Again, I think he performs pretty well at SummerSlams and Survivor Series.
A no
That's
holds
with
barred
Dominic.
match. Yeah.
Right, with him and Dominic.
And that was
Uh,
weird too because we didn't get a Universal Champion versus WWE Champion that Survivor Series.
no, it was very, very different.
Very different Survivor Series.
I
Yeah.
think with NXT, because all
Mm-hmm.
the world titles were defended separately.
Yep.
Because a lot of it was triple threat matches, which I don't think they wanted to go too far with. Because I know Adam Cole and Pete Dunne wrestled that night.
Yep.
Who was Universal Champion? The Fiend and Daniel Bryan,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Brock and Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
But
Well, it was a no holds barred
match.
match too. And
Yeah,
Dominic Mysterio came in to the story at this point too. Dominic's here.
Yeah, the start of a pretty budding career for that young man. But anyway,
And Lesnar beat the living hell out of that boy too.
sure did.
Poor Dominic. Welcome to the club,
Sure
kid.
Yeah, welcome to the club. My God, he's been beaten with kendo sticks, F5, German suplex. What can't you do to the man? He's been
Yeah.
beaten up more than Guevara has.
They beat the
But,
shit out of that boy. But
Sure.
yeah, the Royal Rumble. Lesnar says that no one deserves an
Yes.
opportunity at my title, so instead I'm gonna go with the entrant at number one and see what happens. I wasn't a big fan of
What?
this thing because
What?
I felt it wasted 13 competitors. It did. It did
Well,
waste 13 people, and it wasted like it felt like for me. It didn't start until after Lesnar was done. I was like, all right, can we just get this thing over with?
well, my thing was I had no idea why you would include him in the match. There was other viable candidates to, defend the title against.
Skull Root, real quick, brings up
Um,
Nia Jax. Skull, if you heard earlier, we said that, yeah, Nia Jax is causing problems again in the real world. She's still
mm-mm,
fucking up. Just like I
mm-mm,
said, stop, Nia. Go home.
mm-mm,
Find a different job. Go be an insurance salesman or
mm-mm,
something.
mm-mm. Yep, mm-mm. I can't with her. She tore up Dana Brooke, poor thing.
Go make
I'm I'm
cupcakes or
I'm
something. This is, please find a different career. You're going to hurt someone.
I I'm for sure Dana Brooke was concussed on Monday.
She was.
I'm for sure
One of these days,
because
it's
the
going to get
way
worse. What does this come now? Concussions. It's been Becky Lynch's face. Her fucking nose basically was punched off her face. What happens next? What's it going to take? Is it going to be Kairi Zane took that Matt Nasty buckle bomb. Kairi Zane weighs like 110 pounds. She had crashed into the fucking buckle. What's it going to take? Fucking Nia Jax to slam Shayna Baszler through a table and Shayna doesn't stand back up? For that to be the end?
it's yeah, I just didn't like the way Dana landed on Monday.
No.
I just didn't. I just I
It's not right, man.
because look at the way her head bounced. If you guys are listening, go ahead and look at Dana Brooke, Nia Jax, and you'll see the way that poor young lady
Like a
and Dana Brooke is the one in
fucking
the blonde.
basketball, bro.
Just boom boom. I said that's concussion. She is concussed, and why is she not suing her? I would have sued because she's not she's a danger
She
to the
is.
ladies in the ring.
If there's
And the
anyone that says I don't know your
scary
own strength, it's definitely Nia Jax. She does not know her own strength, and you're gonna hurt someone even worse than you already have. Either
but she
figure
always
out how to
comes
not
back.
hurt people or get a different job.
But she always says, like, you guys just don't know. But I'm like, I see what I see.
We see it,
Because
Nia.
it's not. But anyway, we can go ahead and get petitions on that later. But
But yeah, back to Brock. But no, Skull says he
yeah,
brings it up too. Yeah, the Royal Rumble for Lesnar during the time wasn't a good idea, and I think Skull. I think they just didn't have any ideas, if you put it that way.
they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not. Uh, because it doesn't make logical sense as far as WWE goes. For the past 27 years, 25, 26 years,
Yeah.
except for one time in those 26 years, the WWE Championship was defended
Mm-hmm.
in the Royal Rumble match in 2016. Why insert your WWE champion when he's not defending
Into the
the
match. Yeah.
championship
It made no
or
sense.
doing something? So if Brock were to win, what would have happened? He
Right.
gets to choose who he wants.
That was the
It
whole
just didn't make
point. What was it
sense.
gonna happen? So we're just gonna like what? No one knew. I was like, what? What are you doing? Huh?
So he tosses out 13, like you said, he tosses out 13 people simultaneously.
Yeah.
Um, it it
Finally,
took
Drew. Yeah. Drew
it took
hits him with the
Drew
claymores.
to claymore him over the top, which was a great pop because people were like so happy, and so was
Finally,
I.
yeah.
It's like thank God, thank Ricochet too. Ricochet should be thanked.
Yes,
Okay,
Ricochet. Yes.
Ricochet should be thanked because he low blowed him, which gave Drew McIntyre the opening to claymore his butt over the
And
title.
Ricochet, I think you can add that
Thank
to your resume,
Ricochet.
sir, that you punched Lesnar in the nuts. Not many people can say
Can
that they've done that.
can we give Ricochet the credit that he deserves?
Well, unfortunately,
Save
though,
Ricochet 2021.
they take Ricochet to Super Showdown, which is another bullshit overseas,
Yeah,
and
8 seconds or something
8
like
seconds,
that.
and then that's at this time in the real world. This is where the world starts to fall apart. So we didn't know what was going to happen at WrestleMania. and we didn't know this was the last time that we saw Lesnar on television with crowds, and we didn't know what was a good thing, what we had until it was gone, and our WWE champion didn't show up again now until WrestleMania 36 Part 2, which aired on the second night and in front of no crowds. Drew McIntyre put the Lesnar to bed, if you will.
Yeah.
And Lesnar lost opportunities here uh, be with Cain Velasquez. They were trying to set up, that didn't happen. And then it finally happened at the Crown Jewel event, which was overseas
Huh.
again. And he beat Velasquez with a Kimura lock. It was really confusing there. And then Lesnar fucked up in the real life again with the UFC and didn't get to be able to go back to the UFC. And then they said that later this year that Lesnar was done with WWE. So after WrestleMania Part 2, that was it.
Okay. You're done. All right. And
Now that's it. And now we're all looming to the fact that he might walk in the door tomorrow.
oh god,
Oh, God.
I dread.
And that's
I
it. That's
dread.
the entire history of Brock Lesnar. The up and down, the good, the bad, the very bad at the
And
end.
the ugly.
At the time of the Mad
And the
King, the
ugly.
ugly Mad King at the end.
Yeah. Well, you can't help. You can't deny he's had a career.
He has. And he's pretty much done everything if you think about it.
Well, he has.
Yeah.
I'm, and he did things in record time. You're looking at you look at the first run that he had. He did everything. Like I said, everything that he did usually takes a normal guy 5 to 10 years to do. He did it in less than a few months.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to give the guy a little credit. Though he is a legend, he will be a Hall of Famer eventually, somewhere down the line. But to have a stranglehold over a world title, that's not fair to your fans. It's not fair
it's
to,
not. In my opinion,
it's
now
not
Brock
fair
is
to the
bad for
wrestler.
business right now. He used to, at one point Brock was very good for business, and I think now he's not very good anymore.
In the first few years of his return of the current run, yeah, he was box office. After a while, it's just like it's getting too much of the same. But you know, guys like Drew, guys like Roman are in their positions now. We don't need Brock.
No.
You got two good stars, and you have a fighting WWE champion and Drew McIntyre, and a fighting Universal champion like Roman Reigns. So you don't need Brock Lesnar. I
You
don't
don't.
think. And if he
Please,
walks in the door, I hope someone eliminates him quick.
Lesnar needs
Because
to
I
stay
don't
at
need
home,
that.
man.
I think he might, but it's just you just never know with Vince.
No, you never do. Because he's Vince's boy, if you say that. He is. He is Vince's boy. He is the golden child, if you think about it. But
Yeah,
at the
that's
same time,
Vince's
so is
boy.
McIntyre, according to Vince McMahon. That McIntyre is his golden boy. But at the end of the day, Big Brother Lesnar
But
is always going to matter more than anyone. Maybe even The Undertaker, because Lesnar makes more money and draws more money
he
than everyone.
does. But at the same time, yeah, Drew puts in more miles than Brock
He
does,
does. All day.
and he drives the most miles, and he's the best, and he's not cocky about it. And you know what? He deserves everything that he has.
I
This
agree.
guy worked to get to where he is. He didn't stranglehold the title. Yeah,
Nope.
he's been champion for the whole year except for 2 weeks. But still, the guy is still defending every pay-per-view, every Monday. He's wrestling. He is there for work. That's a world champion in professional wrestling.
Yep.
Period.
Period. Well,
But
Jeremy, so tomorrow night, guys, that is it for tonight. That was, I think, 3 hours 11 minutes talking Brock Lesnar.
What?
Yep. So tomorrow night,
I'm very
guys, we'll be back around 7:30 my time. So we'll probably start at 7 o'clock here my time, and we'll do like a half an hour talk. We'll be just chilling, and it'll be very informal, guys. We'll be talking a little bit, about stuff that happened the week. We'll mention AEW stuff beforehand, and then we'll watch the Rumble together. We'll talk about it simultaneously. We'll hear some of the audio, and then we'll just, probably be eating, might have a beer, so it'll be fun. So I hope you guys join
Yeah,
us for our watch party tomorrow.
yes, our first watch party, guys.
Yes, sir.
Incredible.
Watch party.
All right, y'all. Well, that's it for us, I think. Thank
That's
you
it
guys for
for us.
tuning
Yeah.
in. Wow. Long, long, long one today.
Long show. Yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow for our party. Bring the booze. Bring your own booze. Bring your own food. Bring yourself.
Yep.
But y'all have a
We'll
good
see you
night.
tomorrow.
My name's AJ East Coast, and I've been your host, and I hope y'all have a good evening.